See, just like that, we're live.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome.
Look at that. Oh, we got a lot of people waiting.
Yeah, there's over 100 people waiting so that we can tell them about
This topic.
pseudo edition changes.
Yeah.
So we'll probably jump right into it. We have Instructor Boy here too, by the way.
That's right.
2 weeks in a row.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wanted someone who knew 5th edition pretty well, who can maybe act as almost the audience and help asking us questions.
And so you got me?
Well, I said pretty well. Yeah, I didn't say they had to be
I
an
mean,
expert.
you know the system's like ups and downs well enough to like create entire classes to fill different niches in it. I think that puts you well above the curve for an average person's
Stop.
5th edition knowledge.
Stop.
That's about me.
Well, I appreciate being here, and whatever we're gonna glean from this. So what do you got?
So I've been talking to a whole bunch of 5e developers, and something kept coming up, which was fairly interesting, is that, first of all, that last week, and you were at the summit, which will probably come up a little too, which is the other reason I wanted you on, is that they announced that One D&D is dead. that was, quote, nothing but a code name. And they're actually not making 6th edition or even 5.5, and it's all going to be 5th edition. It's going to be 5th edition
we
forever.
always knew it was going to be a code name, right? D&D Next was not the name of the edition. It was a code name.
They very quickly scrubbed the site, and it was not... I agree, but it does not feel like this was as planned as they thought.
You're right. You're right.
Did they
And
scrub the site?
they're backing down in an interesting way, but there was no way they were going to call it anything other than just D&D with nothing after it, which is, by the way, what they call 5th edition. They don't call it D&D 5th edition. There's not like branding with a big 5th edition. They just put D&D. They just put Dungeons and Dragons. It's smart because people who they're trying to get in, who just know the cultural cachet of Dungeons and Dragons, they don't know edition numbers. They just know this is Dungeons and Dragons, that thing I heard about.
Correct.
So we even said in your early prediction streams, and I think I was one of the ones who mentioned it, and you agreed, Stephen, that at the end of the day, they were going to call whatever came out of it Dungeons and Dragons, and also put no number at the end of it, whether the code name was One D&D or not.
Correct.
But the interesting thing is that they have before they at least gave the appearance that is like, look, we want to make this into something that's eternal and perpetual, that will never have an edition shift. And to do that, we're going to make some pretty significant changes to the rules that mostly keep it similar to 5th edition. But they didn't sort of completely say that it wasn't a shift. And as you mentioned, Stephen, that may have been partially because they couldn't get the D&D Beyond license while still saying it was exactly the same. But now they've moved on to a pretty familiar strategy of branding to say, no, this is 5th edition. It's just the 2024 revision of it. It's exactly the same with some changes. And that's something that, like you were saying, Stephen, a lot of people have seemed a little confused about. Like, what does that exactly mean? Does that mean anything? How can they do that? There are differences. Some of these classes are just so different than another class with the same name. How can it actually just be the same edition with just a revision? How can it be compatible? And the answer is, well, this has happened a lot of times before. Paizo has put out things such as Unchained and the upcoming Starfinder Enhanced. Dungeons and Dragons has done it in almost every edition, depending on what you consider to be an edition, whether that's 4th edition Essentials or 3.5 for 3rd edition, or different versions of like AD&D back in the old days. There have been these sort of not a quite a new edition, micro edition shifts that have often happened in the industry. And so I think it's important in this video today that we discuss how they worked, discuss how they failed, and how branding on them has sometimes not done exactly what Wizards had wanted in some of those previous editions. And so therefore how they're likely to change things up this time around.
Yeah, and one of the reasons Mark's there. Mark actually worked, I believe it was your first published product with your name on it was Pathfinder Unchained.
Close enough. It was
Close
the
enough.
first major book release that I actually worked on all the way through. I technically have a credit in Monster Codex because it was done and being copy fitted when I came in, and they were like, wow, this is a page under in the goblin section. And I was like, I can write another goblin to fill that page. And they're okay. So I did like literally in that book the least amount of design that caused me to be both in the authors and listed as doing design work on that book because I came in right at the end. But Unchained was my first book that I was working on, not even from start to finish because they had done some outlining before I was there, but like 90% of the book's process and a lot of the book's text I worked on. And that was also a sort of mid edition. It came out about like halfway through Pathfinder first edition with variant rules and new options and new looks at ways to do things in a way that was one of, I think, the most successful edition revision or refreshes that I've seen in any of the Pathfinders or Dungeons and Dragons in terms of what it did and how it was received by fans. Maybe not most successful in terms of sales, because 3.5, I'm sure, made great sales for Wizards. That may have been one of the best in that case. But in terms of reception of people being like, they liked Unchained, but they didn't feel like they had to use it. They did feel like it was compatible, and that Paizo was telling the truth, that it was not a new edition. It was a sort of an optional book that would allow you to do things. Whereas 3.5, on the other hand, especially since it was branded as not 3.0, as being a different thing, made a lot of money, but also maybe made people a little more upset to thinking this really is a new edition because there's so many changes. So there's sort of a spectrum between like how much money you make, how people feel about it, whether they feel like you're really in the same edition or not.
So real quick, I'm going to give a real quick overview and then we'll get into it. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and super chats get answered right away, as well as member chats like Cheese of Ages. I'll get to that in a second. Actually, I did see one quick question that says, are we going to have to buy new books? Yes, you're going to have to buy new books as part of this. But
yeah, Wizards has announced that they are going to make you buy new books and on Beyond as well, because they said they have a lot of new art and new ideas and concepts is what
that's
they
part
said
of
at the
this
summit.
Whenever they do a new edition, you always have to buy new books. So we're going to go through and explain to you how we think this is going to work. And the reason we can do this is A, Mark has actually worked on these type of products. B, probably a lot of people who are working now at WoTC, they used to work at Piezo, and they have done this for Pathfinder, so I imagine they're going to probably use similar methodologies. And C, other companies...
I'm by the way, not completely sure of that, because none of the people at WoTC worked on Pathfinder Unchained. But it is possible that there would be influences because they were very familiar with Unchained.
Yeah. And also other companies have done this, like they're saying Vampire the Masquerade, Magic the Gathering is the one that I use a lot.
And Wizards itself.
Yeah, Wizards themselves have done it. So there is a method to this madness. And then Instructor Boy can also pipe in whenever he wants. But don't worry, I promise we're just getting this out of the way because there was I've been talking, a lot of people didn't know. They didn't know that like all this, like they didn't know that WoTC hired a ton of Paizo people, like a lot. They didn't know that this is even possible, that you can just update a version and not even call it 5.5, just call it 5, or do what Pathfinder did, say it could be 5th edition Unchained, which they're not going to do, but they could call it something like that. They could come up with a name and how do you have 2 classes now, which is what happened with Unchained. There was like 2 versions of the monk and 2 versions of the thief.
There was the monk and the Unchained monk.
Yes.
And it was always very clear you could play the one that you wanted to play, but that the Unchained monk was recommended for some of the changes that had been made in it.
Yep, and we'll explain that. But real quick, I'll do the quick super history. The super history is way back when, like 2 years ago, WoTC found out that D&D Beyond was making an infinite amount of money, and they wanted that money. And they found out that they had a license, D&D Beyond, to come out with content for 5th edition forever. Okay, that was their license, and they basically had a license for 5th edition. WoTC went and tried to buy D&D Beyond, and D&D Beyond said, no, why would we ever sell to you? We're making money hand over fist. So WoTC said, okay, we are announcing a new edition, and we're going to come out with a new edition, and therefore your license will expire, and you can't do anything going forward. So now do you want to sell to us? And now again, I'm like oversimplifying this, but this is the Cliff Notes version. The answer is yes, they did get sold, and they bought them for like, I think it was like 146 million. And now they have 2 digital properties. They have D&D Beyond, which they obviously make a lot of money on now, and they're going to do the new VTT. Well, here comes the crazy part. They don't need to come up with a new edition anymore because they already bought D&D Beyond, so they can keep it, calling it 5th edition or 6th or whatever. And they were trying to, I don't know why they were trying to rebrand a new version, or they were saying it's not, I don't know. They're messing up the messaging quite a bit with the One D&D, blah, blah, blah.
I feel like their claim was it was perpetual, that they would make some shifts to it, and that then it would never change again because it was just like, remember that release announcement video where they were just like, this is an end to all editions.
Yes.
It's just Dungeons and Dragons. No.
But then they were changing the rules, and things were changing quite a bit, and then people were confused, and the messaging has just been, if there's one thing that's consistent about WoTC, is the messaging has been bad, and this is another one where the messaging is bad. So we're going to try to simplify this. So long story short, it looks like it's not going to be One D&D. It's just going to be in D&D. Yes, a lot of people are pointing out on the back of the D&D books, it does say 5th edition.
It does. They have it there. It's not prominent. Because it is the 5th edition.
It is.
But they don't go out there and talk about D&D 5th edition
really like
loudly.
The 9th edition if you include 3.5.
I remember that one. But they don't go out there and like brand heavily on 5th edition. They don't like promote 5th edition. They just put Dungeons and Dragons like on the front and when they're talking about it. Not in the same way that Paizo talks about Pathfinder 2nd edition and will like very intentionally say 2nd edition a lot.
So we're going to talk about what we expect. Now, we've been talking the whole time. What do you think about all this, Instructor Boy?
I mean, really, I was whenever you told me about all this, I was interested to see like what the perspective was. But the whole time that this has been going on, in talking about like the backwards compatibility, this has honestly been the thing for me as a third-party creator. I have been most focused on, because suddenly if they release a new edition, I get hit up by everyone that's bought all my former stuff, and they're like, hey, is this class that you wrote, is this going to still work? Is this backwards compatible like you're saying over there? And originally, the way that it sounded, I was all here for, because what they were saying is like, all the supplements that you've already bought, I remember that's what they said specifically, a supplement. So if I'm looking at my books and I'm like, okay, you have the core rule books, I essentially think anything else other than the core rule books would be a supplement, and a supplementary material to the core rule books. So I would think that would include Xanthar's guide and Tasha's, but they've changed that messaging a little bit more, into where they're now saying, well, no, now what we mean is the adventures will be compatible and the classes should still work alongside all the other stuff from like the previous editions. And I'm like, okay, well, if you can play them both at the same table, whatever, but like this subclass that I get in Xanthar's guide doesn't actually work with the stuff that's coming in this new edition. The classes aren't really like compatible. So like, the most notable one that I keep pointing to is the Bard in the new edition the Bard in whatever this revision is getting a 10th level feature for their subclasses. That's not a thing in 5e. 5e, it's pretty notorious. Bard gets 3rd, 6th, and then they skip all the way to 14th. That's it. So now it's like all these bards that you've already written, we now have to update to where they all have a new 10th level feature. So that was immediately, to me, I was like, oh, it's not backwards compatible. And then they started getting more specific about what they mean by that, because this got to be a big sticking point with them. As for why they're doing the thing now where it's like, we're no longer calling it, One D&D, we're going with just this is 5e revised. If it's a marketing thing, it's a marketing thing. Whatever at this point with that. I'm more so at this point like, I really worry that I worry how this affects the third party market more than I really worry how this is going to affect WoTC. That's at the end of the day, that's my main cheese, right? So if this is going to mean like I'm gonna have to do updated versions of all my classes for One D&D while I'm currently planning a 200-page compendium to put up on the DMs Guild this year. I'm like, what? What? It feels like it's just making a mess.
Well, yes.
Here's
and no.
my thought on that.
Okay.
So what I would think is that when they say compatibility, what they mean is that it's like basically mostly compatible and it works. It doesn't break. Like
Right.
if you created a bard subclass and you were like, well, it's bad that it's missing things at level 10, so I'm just gonna make it stuff pretty strong at 6 and 14 to like make up for that. And then they made something that also has something at 10, but is balanced by having 4 features in that time. Like it's not really not great that yours isn't getting one at the level that all of the new ones do, but it still technically works. So what I would suggest is that if Wizards is claiming, which they very directly are, that there's compatibility, and someone asks you if there's compatibility, you could say that yes, it's up to the standards of Wizards compatibility from Tasha, Xanathar, and all their other books that they have claimed.
Right.
So is mine. However, you would be like, I'm not satisfied with just that level of compatibility either. So you can get those; they work great in your games, but I want to make an even more advanced version of this that is to the revision, and it has 4 new subclasses, and it's called the Alchemist Revised. And I'm going to put that one out too as a separate product that's like a revised and expanded version of the Alchemist. And so you could do that as a way to say like the Alchemist is perfectly. I know that's one of your classes, the one I remember, because it's also a PF2 class. But it's like Alchemist is perfectly workable with under this new system, but we want to make one that's seamless with it and that has more content. So I think that is the angle I would think a third-party publisher could do well with, potentially.
Well, I'm going to say this was not planned. Okay, this is yet another reason why no one's trusting WoTC. It was 100% not planned. They were coming out with 6th edition. They were coming out because the whole OGL thing was drawing a line in the sand where there was like everything before the OGL is no more and only you can go forward. And they were definitely drawing a line in the sand, and which was only 4 months ago. And they were like, yeah. And now they have been able to, not only have they had to reverse course multiple times, but now it's like, okay, there's no more line. It's going to be backwards compatible. We're not even calling it One D&D. It's no more. It's just 5th. It's just D&D forever. It's going to be 100% compatible. Like, they have really changed their tune because they were not going to make it backwards compatible. I agree. They did say they were only going to call it D&D, even if it was 6th or 7th or 8th edition, the same way Magic. Magic, there is editions, but Magic's up to, I don't even know, like 12th edition or something. There's a lot of editions of Magic, but no one calls it that. They just call it Magic the Gathering. But there's only going to be one edition they call it D&D. But now they really have gone completely backwards because they've seen, they probably went back and said, okay, everyone hates us. Our hardcore audience hates us. The summit was a disaster, and that's like our best. If this can't get any worse, but it's going to get worse if we start really alienating. If we alienate, we've already alienated the hardcore fans. Now we've alienated our influencers, and then if we say that the D&D, the DMs Guild doesn't work anymore, then we're going to alienate. They're going to have no customers left. Literally, they're going to have only new people, and they can't alienate every single person because if they did do a clean break, then exactly what you said is like, okay, well, now you can't buy anything from DM's Guild, and you need to put up new stuff. And now suddenly all those people are angry. It's like, how many people can you make angry? So they were backed into a corner, and they're like, okay, we have to come out and make this not sort of backwards compatible, but fairly backwards compatible with 5th edition, and start saying that. And in terms of for someone like you, it's actually strangely an opportunity, because now you can come out with things twice.
Yeah, but I saw someone in chat did mention like this is Crim7. The problem for third-party publishers is that there will be a strong pressure on them to revise and update for free. Yeah, like this is the kind of thing where like WoTC might get. I mean, they're not going to get a free pass on this or anything like that. But like because like we have to follow what WoTC does. We're following in their path, and like. For me, where I'm dropping thousands of dollars on new artwork this year, where I am like spending hours and hours and hours just doing new layout, submitting stuff off to a printer, spending more money to get proofs in, double check, spending time, whatever. That to me is about to feel like here within the next year or two, I'm going to have to come up with new artwork to support a different version of it because I know. One of the complaints I would get immediately is this is just the same artwork that was in the old one. And then it's like, well, I guess I can combine the new. I'm doing twice the amount of work for not really much of an improvement in pay. You know, like I could see doing a One D&D version of some of my classes where it's like, okay, so we changed the subclass scaffolding where everything's at 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 14th. And then we just include that as an optional thing in the back. It's another one of those things where I'm like, this feels like it's becoming way too complicated to achieve something that could easily have been achieved as a supplementary book. They about did it with Tasha's with the revised features. Like Ranger gets different features, yada yada yada. And this is there was a quote in my YouTube comments today that I really wanted to like. Yeah, they're trying to do surgery with a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel, and I firmly believe like, yeah, there's stuff in the player's handbook that they could be fixing right now, and instead they're choosing to take out the whole core. And I don't know. We'll see how it works out for them, but.
Well, let me get to some quick super chats.
Good call.
Cheese of Alley just said, can staying 5th edition really solve burnout that affects every system? 3.5 div give 3 E shot in the arm, but we did change editions eventually. So
I think it can help with system
it definitely can
burnout.
help.
And it's especially important to note that WoTC has a lot of metrics of what they're doing, who they're selling to,
and it's been working really well so far.
Yes. I mean, I think it has been working well in terms of selling D&D books, like making decisions about how to handle the public and third-party publishers and like PR and marketing. Maybe not, but I think that their overall sales strategy for 5th edition compared to 4th was obviously very successful. Correct. And has made Dungeons & Dragons far more successful than it has been either ever or maybe like at the very height back in some of those early days. Those would be the only time that was even comparable. And profit-wise, it's, even though they say it's under monetized, the profit is up way more than it ever has been at any point by a lot. Yeah. Bloomberg, so you say what you want, but their sales for Dungeons and Dragons are even if they're weaker now because of mistakes, are still pretty good.
I don't know if anyone saw. I think I'm the only one who read it. Bloomberg did a cover piece on Chris Cox and D&D, and it's very interesting. You should definitely check it out. And they talk about
specifically on Chris Cox.
Yeah, he's the cover.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's really? It's about him and how they talk about how it's under monetized and how they're taking care and how they're affecting it, and then how the D&D. It's actually it's a long article too, and it actually goes through all these interesting things like the D&D movie. Like everyone talks about the first D&D movie and why it was so bad, but no one remembers that. Well, TSR sold the rights to a 19-year-old kid in Canada in like 1990, and he was about seriously, and then he was about to lose the rights, so he just directed the movie himself and wrote it at age like 29, and it was terrible. Because then that happens all the time. Marvel did the same thing. They sold away all the rights, and then like this is it's only been the last 20 years that people are starting to realize, oh, you can't sell away rights to your properties for movies or TV. But back in the 20 years ago, Everyone did. It was just like, because nothing ever came of it. It was free money, and no one thought anything of it. And it took Hasbro like 20 years to get the rights back because the guy kept making movies, and the rules, as long as he kept making movies, he keeps the rights. They went direct to video. There was 2 more D&D movies, and he was working on the 4th one, and then they eventually just bought him out because they couldn't take it anymore, but the rights were legally sold to him. This happens. This is very constant. This happens all the time in the world of movies and TV, by the way, all the time.
So for the other super chats,
Yep.
PJ said hello Indestructiboy. And then Bob McDowell had a comment underneath the initial super chat that said, doesn't a 2014-2024 split make for a min-max nightmare? How can Wizards nerf things when people will just pick and choose the best options they want from old and new?
That's a
the
question.
Answer is that the answer is, as always, any edition, any system, any publisher, whether they're third party or first party, makes mistakes and puts out things that are broken, especially in combination with things other people were writing that they weren't paying attention to. So any group is going to have to curate, whether they switched editions or not, what combinations to allow. And it at least starts the conversation in D&D if you see that there's literally 2 Moon Druids. That you may want to just say, oh, well, we only allow the old Moon Druid or we only allow the new Moon Druid. Or if your group looks at it carefully and is like, well, there's reasons to like both of them, I guess we'll allow both. But if one is obviously just stronger, then you should decide whether you want the stronger one or the weaker one as a group. And D&D doesn't innately help start conversations about what content to allow in the same way that Pathfinder does with the rarity system of common and uncommon, rare and unique for certain items and spells, not just meaning it's more valuable, but meaning like, oh, it's hard to find. You have to ask the GM if you can have this unless it's common. But it is still a conversation that needs to be had. And when you're moving to the revision that is coming in 2024, you're going to need to have that conversation.
So
yeah, I mean, this is. If you thought if you thought that multiclassing was rough, like if you already think that like 5e has got its own issues with multiclassing, imagine what this is going to do whenever people just look at like, oh, well, if they nerf something in the new edition, then people are, if they're looking to min-max, then the builds are going to go towards, let's just pick up the stuff that was in the old one and try and cross this over. People are going to still really highly value a first level cleric dip because they can get heavy armor and cast in heavy armor as a wizard. So this, it's another thing where I think, man, this would have been so much better handled as a separate edition. If I'm just thinking about the mechanics of it and how it's all going to play with it, it just.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about it, because they can't have they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Is they call it 5th edition, but they come out with a new revised version, and you can do this. Starfinder is doing this right now. Now, I have played a lot of Starfinder. Starfinder was created in like 11 months, I believe. It was written really fast, and it is fantastic.
It definitely took more time than, I mean, I guess it's been a long time, so I haven't been keeping track, but it
was
took
about 11,
a decent amount
months.
of time if you're talking about all of the iterations.
It was very fast. It was incredibly fast.
It didn't have a playtest cycle, so it was certainly faster than normal.
And
I mean, it had an internal playtest, but not printed playtest book that then the next year was the
considering
game.
The size and scope of the Starfinder, it was probably the fastest edition for any major RPG I've ever seen.
Plus, it wasn't even just an edition; it was its own new game, and it had to have a ton of things that were completely different than everything else. Whereas a new edition, you can somewhat convert certain things sometimes,
and it is excellent. But oh my God, can you tell that they went and made this way too fast? Because there's a lot of glaring issues, and it's great. I mean, I could not come up with a new game in a year nearly 1/10 as good as this, or I don't know if anyone can. I mean, it's an amazing game, but damn, does it need help? And they are coming out with an Unchained. It's not Unchained, but
or enhanced.
Enhanced, they're calling it. But it's going to be, we are looking at everything and we're smoothing it over and making everything, now they have time. They've used the
clearly,
game
obviously, like Pathfinder
Yes.
Unchained, but for Starfinder, they're even the name of Starfinder Enhanced versus Pathfinder Unchained is really meant to evoke the same name.
And they're not having the same agita that people are having with 5e. In fact, a lot of people are like, good, I'm glad. I want to start using the new stuff. We'll probably breathe new life into Starfinder. I even myself, I love Starfinder, but I had problems with it. I'd be very happy to look at the new
I can tell you
books.
why that there's a different response, Stephen.
Yes.
Or
Why?
most likely.
Okay.
So for one, as I said before, Pathfinder Unchained probably in sales not one of the more successful pseudo editions, but in keeping people very happy and not like grumpy about the way that things changed, it's probably up at the top of all of the ones I've ever seen. So Paizo fans who did know about that had experienced it. They knew what to expect and they liked it, first of all. And second of all, Starfinder players especially, Pathfinder players too, but Starfinder players especially, that's rarely the only edition or game that they would play. Right?
True.
Like most people I know that play Starfinder also play Pathfinder or play something else. Whereas a lot of 5e people only played 5e and maybe have never played anything except for 5e. And that's important because even if the Starfinder player came from 4th edition D&D or 3rd edition, they've seen something like this before and it happened in a game and they know just generally what it could be. And especially if they saw Pathfinder Unchained, they know that it's like very fun book that didn't really rock the boat a lot. Whereas I think a lot of the 5e audience, this is the first time, like it's been
definitely.
10 years.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even call someone who's been playing the game for 10 years a new person to the game. And they wouldn't have even been able to play through an edition, like through one of these little mini shifts in the past decade. So there's a ton of people who just haven't seen it, and that's why they're more confused about it. It's not a mystery, I think, why.
25 North said they should just call it Advanced D&D. Advanced D&D 5e. You know what? I think I'm going to call it that because you win because I need a term for it. I don't want to call it Unchained, so let's call it Advanced 5th edition.
So
I'm going to make that stick. I'm going to make that stick.
With 550 Canadian, curious whether the new 5e will be an update to SRD 5.1, if these changes will be added to the Creative Comments as well.
Completely.
If we take Kyle Brink at face value, the answer is yes, because he directly got he got directly asked by some of the content creators that had him on, and he then directly said yes. He kind of sometimes dodged and answered questions in a way that gave him some leg room, but I feel that he didn't when he answered that question and that he said that they would. So we will see if they do that in the end, but I'm pretty confident that they're not going to just not do the thing he directly said in the interview. So we'll see.
So okay, let's get to. We've been talking around it, but let's figure this out. Again, if you have questions, let us know because we have literally someone here who has done this for Pathfinder, so he will know more than both of us combined. So for Advanced 5th edition. I'm making that stick. I'm making it a thing. I'm making it happen. How will they go about this? How would you go about this, Mark? You have been tasked by Wizards to update the classes, maybe update the monsters, smooth over the rules, but still call it 5th edition. And with knowing that new books are going to come out, which they've already admitted, they're going to come out with new players book, new DM book, new monster manuals, all that. So we're
doing one of our role plays, like when I had you be the CEO and I was the GM and that other time. So in this role play, I am the D&D design team.
Yes.
And architects.
Yes.
And Stephen, I'm gonna say you are WoTC, you're D&D corporate that I need to ask questions to. So first thing I say is, I'm a designer. Even since the day we released 5e, I've had tons of cool ideas for ways we could update it and improve it. And like when you asked for things before, I put some of them in Tasha's and Xanathar's, and I have different ideas for what to do, but I need to know what your goal is with this. is your goal to make the most money from this new revision in and of itself, or now that you already possess D&D Beyond and have achieved that goal of it, is your goal to create the least friction with the fan base from the new revision that will still create a new revision and hit our virtual tabletop goals? So, Stephen WoTC Corporate, which of those do you want to prefer?
Let me think about
people's
that.
Goodwill or making more money on this release?
Let me think about that while Taron answers. He got his own super chat. Look at that.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Rage the Punk and asked him, will you sell your supplements for Astral Diamonds if you can sell on D&D Beyond?
If they go the way that they're saying and they want to create an ecosystem and a marketplace, over there on like D&D Beyond, I'm all for making more ways for people to pick up my stuff. This is why I do like I've got Grim Press that converts my stuff over to Fantasy Grounds. There's a couple of people working on converting my stuff over to Foundry. I'm in talks with the guys over at Alchemy about converting some of my stuff over for that. So more ways that people can find my stuff. I mean, if all I got to do is give the sign off, I'll give the sign off if that's the royalty check showing up in my account every month.
So, by the way, I see a lot of people commenting that Advanced 5th Edition already exists.
As Level Up.
We love
Level Up over
we love
here.
Level Up because
Roll for Combat. We love it so much that most of our 5th Edition content is converted and written by some of the main Level Up.
Yeah, I thought you guys had like most of the team.
We have the team.
We have.
We have
everyone. I don't know exactly who's on the Level Up team, but we had in the past at 3 total people from the Level Up team. So if they have a larger team than 3,
the only one we don't have is Savannah Broadway, but I can get her in 2 seconds if I wanted to.
Okay, fair enough.
So, I mean, she's busy.
So, yeah,
anyhow.
I wasn't familiar with exactly how far their team went, but I did know, I know what things the people that I work with did, but I didn't know their entire product line.
So, just so people are familiar, when we come out, obviously, with our own
Paul
products.
Hughes, William Fisher, and Sen HHS has done some things for Level Up and also some things for us.
Yeah. I mean, well, William and... I think he wrote there are like 2 or 3 of his books, or like the Monster Manual.
And Paul did that whole thing with for Dungeon Game Masters with the traps and everything too.
Yeah, they write all of our 5th edition content for our Battles of Bestiary, for the Dragon book, everything of ours except they did parts of that. The Indigo Isles. They did parts of the Indigo Isles.
Yeah, David and Ross helped convert Indigo Isles. Also, I did Battle Zoo Otherworlders entirely. Yes. So that was one where I definitely took the advantage of the fact that I'd seen many conversions they had done of similar content in the past and used that to help refine my own conversions into 5e.
And I will have to say that something that we do, because I see people here saying like everyone has their own edition of 5e already, because they said Cobalt Press has their own version coming out, and
like the Tales of the Valiant, right?
Yeah,
that's the
like
new name for Black Flag.
And then obviously there's Level Up. If you read our stuff, I use Paizo methodology for our 5th edition content, which I think is why everyone's
still regular 5e,
it is.
But it uses the design philosophy of certain things that Pathfinder has more robustly. But it shows that 5e is a system that is flexible enough to use those Piezo ideas. It's just that it usually doesn't in default content.
Yeah, they don't. But the point is that there's already flexibility in 5e. So I would answer your question as corporate.
Okay.
You see, this is where it gets weird. So corporate, I think 6 months ago would have said, cut everyone out, make it a new edition, make it work with the VTT, and make it as many options as possible for microtransactions so that we can itemize the living crap out of it. Now
we can't cut everyone out in corporate. So the question is, do you still want to make a lot of sales on this as like a new set that you're expecting everyone to at least buy the new core set?
I think,
or do you want to make it sound like something that makes people less angry, but that they'll feel is more optional.
I think we have to now say that we are simply enhancing 5th edition. All these things, I'm sure you have like a catalog of all these ideas and things you wanted to errata and smooth out the game. And hey, what do you know? Pathfinder's doing really well, and they have this whole modular system where everything's sort of interchangeable and goes in and out. Maybe we'll go a little bit more towards that with, I don't know, the druid idea you came up with in one of those playtests about 2 months ago. That felt like something Pathfinder would do. Go in that direction more.
Okay, so you are looking to be clear, are you looking for like the minimum amount of Rancor, or are you still trying to make a pretty hefty profit, but you want it to not be like completely monetized because of the fact that that's going to anger people?
Again, if I was smart, I would say, I don't know how smart corporate is because they don't seem to understand their own product, is that I would make it extremely modular like Pathfinder, so that will hit both. It will basically hit every check that we need. Because first, if it's modular, it's easy to monetize. Second, if it's modular, it's easy to program on a VTT. Third, if it's a modular, it's easy to update and change over time. And fourth, if it's modular, it's very easy for third-party people to create their own modules and insert it into the core rule base. So take what you have in 5th edition, and I guess things that are like the outliers and things that are the edge cases, throw those out or try to enfold those into the new rules. Don't necessarily throw them out. Make them come up with a slightly more, modular / consistent system between classes, and then have those fit into that system. So it's not quite a 6th edition, but it is a cleaner version of 5th edition.
Right. So with that as being my mandate, I would say, all right, so off the table is the thing that would create the least Rancor, where it doesn't actually replace the core rules and is instead an expansion book with optional changes. So that's off the table, and that would never make even nearly as many sales as creating things that replace the core book. So we are still replacing that core set of Player's Handbook, a Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. So in that case, you've set that to me. I am being the system architect. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for pain points that people have been talking about along the way. Certainly the CR system, which just does not create encounters that are reliably difficult to a particular degree. That probably means I'm going to be retuning the monsters in a way that doesn't make them like so drastic where it's like, wow, an owlbear now has like 8 more to hit than it did before, but more of just like to make them feel more interesting to fight against. And in places where I've seen reports that like, oh, the Archmage seems to be a creature that does like 3 times as much damage as everyone else and dies instantly when the PCs attack it. That turned out it didn't work out. Maybe I'll tweak it to be not such a glass cannon or other things like that, such that if you were still using the old monsters, like they would run against the PCs. But I could also tell people these new remastered versions of the monsters are based on 10 years of feedback, play testing, and adjustments to be remastered and like better and more interesting than ever before. You sprinkle a little Pathfinder on there, give the owlbear like more than just multi-attack, like how Pathfinder has like the hooting shriek and can rip out your guts. It doesn't have to be literally that, but it should have like some other moves. Because the Monster Manual is one of the ones I can sell as being an upgrade in a way that doesn't sort of make it seem as greedy, because it's like the 10-year anniversary edition with improved stuff based on the playtesting. Then with the Dungeon Master Guide, what I would do is I would reorganize the Dungeon Master Guide, because right now you go into that book and it starts out with a chapter which I actually really like, even compared to other similar chapters about like world building. I think they did a good job talking about world building, but I don't think that's what should be there. Like the first thing that somebody turns it open, that's not what they should find at the beginning of the book. even though it's a good chapter about world building. So I'm going to reorganize it so that it starts with like a welcome GM, you're here now. Let's take a look at some basics, or DM. I'm D&D, so I can call it DM. All right, and I must call it DM. So here's some basics. Let's talk about what your experience is as a DM. And then I'm going to tell you in this thing what page to turn to next as your first thing to read, depending on who you are. Are you brand new to this? Go to this page. Are you someone who's going to be running our official adventures next, and you're just about to pick up Cursier of Extra Strahd, the second curse of Strahd the other time? Then in that case, Strahdic Boogaloo. Then in that case, turn to this page. Are you homebrewing your own content in our multiverse? I'll turn to this page. Creating your own place in the multiverse, then that page. So start people out, show them that it's that, and give some new content there. And then I will describe it as saying your old Dungeon Master's Guide works just fine, but this one has been remastered in order to make it easier, especially for new DMs, to be able to approach, understand with more rules, ideas, and an improved challenge rating system that takes into account 10 years of experience with the old system and its benefits, but also its drawbacks and flaws. So that way people will feel like, if I don't need the new CR system because I've somehow made the old one work and the organization is good for new people who need to find that out, maybe I could stick with the old one, but I kind of want the new one because it sounds cool, but it doesn't feel like it's forcing me. But then with the player's handbook, we're going to kind of have to force them. So in this one, we're going to be making updates that are fundamentally changing the classes to make them play better based on people saying they're missing stuff at 10th level in the Bard that made you feel like you had to wait 8 levels until something like significant happened to you. And there's other factors that people have been playing the game for a long time. So we'll talk about it as being like a remaster, a revision that fixes issues and errata that have built up over 10 years of errata, and makes quality of life improvements like across the board, but that you can still use the old player's handbook if you want. It's still compatible, and they mentioned at the summit, and I would do this too, our glossary still includes some of the old terms in the back, all the old terms in the back that you would only see in the other one. And so that way you can just go there and it'll tell you what it is and be like, oh, this is a thing from that you may have seen in other Dungeons and Dragons books that we're not doing. So that is what I would do with the mandate that you gave me, Stephen.
Aaron was worried we were going to give WoTC really good ideas. Was that a really good idea there? I think they're just going to copy that. Personally,
personally, my thought is like this. This whole update thing that they're rolling out with One D&D with the whole core rulebooks. Here's the reason why I just think that this is not going to work out. It's just not what people want. And I'll just put it in that way. This isn't what people want.
What do they want? No, seriously, I'm curious. What do you think they want?
People are fine with playing 5e right now. It's if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a thing, right? This isn't a broken bike. It needs some repairs and it needs some tweaking. I just don't know that anybody really wants this. 5e is a perfectly serviceable game, and it looks like they're trying to go in a route of because this is what they've said, a more streamlined process that's a lot easier for new players to get into. So maybe rather than an advanced 5e, we go with a simple D&D simplified, D&D 5ES or something like that. Where it is, we have the third level that system. But say it's been 10 years. If I'm trying to sell this to corporate, and I'm like, okay, so here's the idea that we have right now. We have a new edition, quote unquote, that may be able to do pretty well. I don't know that. I think it could do probably about the same, if not slightly better than Tasha's. But for the most part, what we think is we have a lot of dedicated players right now that if we were to shift over to a new edition, I don't believe that we can carry over more than 80%, if we get that. So with that, what I would suggest is we start looking at the core rules and we say, you know what? People were really receptive to the alternate rules that we presented in Tasha's for different class features and stuff. We can build on that and say, look, if you're into 5e, we want to keep adding content rather than saying the old content is... You can use the old content with this new stuff that we're bringing out that is going to feel like we're just sort of filing the serial numbers off of the old content. I mean, here's the thing. This fandom is not dumb. WoTC is not going to pull one over on this fandom. People are not just going to go out and like sheep go out and just buy these core rule books. There's going to be people that are here online that are going to see this stuff and think, okay, is this or is this not worth your money? Now, what I think could do well for them is rather than to, like we were saying, do surgery with a sledgehammer, start doing targeted changes in like expansions on the core rules. They have supplements that they've already released. It's like just keep doing more content. We've had this game now for 10 years and you've added one new class to the game. This is why things are getting stale. The new content that's getting added is like subclasses for stuff that already exists. People are seeing the same old with D&D content that keeps coming out. We should expand on that portfolio a bit more. I don't see the new edition, if that's okay. I don't see the 5e revised as the thing that a majority of people want. And that's just my opinion as somebody that sees the perspectives voiced online. After thousands of comments that I've seen online, I genuinely do not believe that this new edition or this revision is actually what people want.
I agree and disagree, and I'll tell you my point, but let's get to some quick super chats because I always want to get to those.
And then after you, Stephen, I'll give my perspective on that because I think Tara made a very interesting point there that deserves to be explored.
The blue thumbnail for $5 say, "What's next? Battle Zoo for Vagabond?" Well, we come up with a lot of weird Battle Zoo stuff, including the Otherworlder, but which is free. Just go to battlezoo.com. We got a lot of free stuff there. You can play a turkey, for Thanksgiving. You can play a dungeon. Sentient dungeon. You can play a dragon. That's not free though. You can play an Otherworlder, which is very large and very cool in our recent April Fool's prank. And we have a free first, the free first level or level 1 of our Jewel of the Indigo Isles adventure path. It's like 90 pages. Comes with characters, pre-made characters. It comes with the entire first level of the adventure. It comes with gazetteers. It comes with the monsters. It comes with everything you need. Even comes with digital assets. So if you want to put it online, you can. And it's literally the first of 12 chapters from the adventure. We just took it.
It really reminds me of like those, but back in the days, you would get like those demo CDs of like Final Fantasy VII or whatever game, and you would put it in, and you would play it. But then after a certain point, they would just be like, okay, you can't play anymore. It's just the first level. Yeah,
but it also gives you a lot of idea of like what it looks like. And when you open this thing, I think you're gonna fall out of your seat because we're insane.
We had a couple other super chats.
Yeah, we have a couple more.
We have Rage the Promised End for $5 said, as a person who DMs at Gen Con each year, this will create more rules confusion at the con tables.
Well,
definitely will make things a little more confusing, especially depending on when the launch is compared to a big con. If it's close,
well, they got to do something. They have to do with society. I mean, they really should do society.
Or you mean
Adventurers League?
Yeah, Adventurers League.
Well, oh my god, I used to DM for Adventurers League. I can't even imagine the headaches they're prepping for right now.
Yeah, I mean, but like, it's gonna be a nightmare.
They've always been an afterthought.
I know,
always an afterthought where it's like, we're gonna make a big sweeping change to the game. Cool, here you go, and then suddenly it's like 6 months later, they're like, oh yeah, we have to update this for Adventurers League, don't we? It's never, yeah.
Yeah, it'll
And
suck.
Ollie Wright said, "Powered by the D&D," as the acronym PBT D&D. And
Yeah.
Steph L said, "Sounds like Wizards is looking to make a watered down Dungeons and Dragons," which not necessarily. That was like one of Taryn's suggestions, and we don't know for sure exactly what they're going to do. I mean, they obviously are targeting at acquisition of new players, so they might choose to do that. But there are ways to simplify certain aspects in a way that does not actually remove depth.
Totally.
And right now, there are a lot of areas where 5e doesn't have a lot of depth to begin with, and there could be ways to simplify without really losing more than they had in those areas, because a few things are needlessly complex, and I think they could fix those.
So,
But Steven, back to you. You had a
I'm trying
response to what Taryn was saying.
even though I'm doing it right now. I'm trying very hard not to talk over people because people yell at me. But it's hard not to get. It's hard, especially when we have Derek on the show. Oh, forget it. By the way, someone here, Bernardo Silva, who's been here forever, said that you have a Kickstarter, Taryn, right now. Do you have one going on right now?
Yeah, just hit 9,000 this morning, actually.
Oh, dude, we'll give us the link.
9,
we'll put it in. We'll promote it. If you told us, I'd promote it. You didn't even mention it. We promote everything. We have to promote it.
I've been developing my own system, kind of following the OGL snafu and everything. It originally started out as a system built out of spite, but now it's something that I genuinely, after playtest, very much just kind of prefer. So yeah, I'm building out my own.
Is that what you call it? The spite system? Oh my god, that would be great.
That was a suggestion.
No, it's Vagabond, right? That's why people said, "What's next, Battle Zoo Vagabond?"
Got it.
That's what it was about.
I thought they wanted us to come up with a new class called Vagabond.
No, you're
I did not.
Steven.
I'm sorry. Well, Spite System. That's Larry David. Remember, he put out a restaurant for Spite. If I'm the only one to watch his Curb Your Enthusiasm, but that's what he did. So that would be great. What's it called? The D&D Spite System.
Yeah. But yeah, the intention with Vagabond is it's supposed to be a system that will my big focus was on trying to remove a lot of the workload off of the GM for the system. So monsters, kind of inspired by Rune by Spencer Campbell, monsters will be able to like pilot themselves. Like the players will be able to see how the monsters go. The GM, whatever you want to say, should be able to say, hey, there's an encounter going on right now. That combat should only take about maybe 10 minutes. And then like if they wanted to get up and walk away from the table and do something, the players could fight that out, and the arbiter probably won't have to do much of anything at all.
Got it. Well, give us the link. Give us the link, buddy. I didn't even know about it. I would have definitely had you. Oh man, you got to be better here. You tell people. Remember, he was so surprised on his own stream.
He mentioned that he was working on a Kickstarter, and that would make it hard for to do updates. But he didn't say that it was currently live.
Yeah, he said working. There's a difference.
It's been live for about I launched it on Friday night, I want to say. We are just under halfway funded. So this is just a development Kickstarter. I'm trying to fund 1 year's salary for me to be able to work on this thing full time. So trying to raise 25,000. We're at 9,000 right now. So we've still got 38 days to go on it though. And yeah, so I'm very, very hopeful.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I just sent you the link, but
I just put it in for everyone to click on. Oh my god, he got videos and everything. Man, look at this. Oh my god, this is a lot of work.
It has been.
Tell me about it.
There's even a combat playtest video that you can see where, whenever I say that this thing is quick, I mean you see a combat scenario play out in less than 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, yes. Anyhow, check on that. And while we're talking about it, do like and subscribe. We don't have enough likes here. I only see 82 likes. It's garbage. We need more likes. Whenever we make a lot of likes, we make Mark do something silly. So come on, get those likes up.
So, Steven, what's your take on what Taryn was saying before about
I just don't really think that I just don't really think the community really wants it.
Yeah. And you said you somewhat agree and you somewhat disagree.
Okay.
Which is true for me too, so I want to hear what you have to say.
Now, the D&D game has gotten stale, and more importantly, they made a lot of decisions in the beginning of D&D, which has unfortunately would have been fine if D&D was still going along the path of 4th edition and just sort of puttering along and being a little, like, little thing they had, and it was part of their stable of games, but nothing huge. Well, it's pretty big, and it's only gotten bigger, and the current structure of D&D is hampered by it cannot grow. When they keep saying it's under monetized, I know exactly what she's saying. They're saying that the way D&D is currently structured and the way they release books and what they're doing, they were never going to make significant money, and they just can't. And they need to restructure. In theory, the best way to do this is to do it from the ground up and start over and come out with a true 6th edition, and really come out with not just a 6th edition, but this way Paizo does it is like, we're going to come out with 4 lore books a year. We're going to come out with 12 adventures a year. We're going to come out. So, the way Magic does, like, okay, this is the schedule. You can like set a watch to it that this is what we're coming out with every single year. This many books, this many adventures, this many standalone, this many connected adventures. Like, it's all very structured. They can do that and make a lot of money because then they get people into that, rhythm. But right now it's a mess. They wrote 5th edition with a lot of public opinion, which I don't think is the best way to design a system. I think they used a little too much crowd sourcing when it came to creating the 5th edition. It is definitely straining under the weight of the number of players. They're using the DM's Guild to fill in a lot of holes of the system, which is only leading to other issues. The adventures were written by third-party people and no one even in WoTC. And now they want to come out with a VTT. And the very first thing you need, if you're going to come out with a VTT, is you need rock-solid rules. You need rules that are extremely consistent, because anything that's computer programmed, you need to have rules for, and they need to be very logical. So the current edition of 5e, I don't think works very well for for a program, especially looking at the way they want to monetize 5th edition or D&D. So you might think, okay, they don't want it, as in the fans, but the problem is that D&D is at a stage where it will not grow anymore, and if anything, it'll start shrinking or wither and die. And WoTC looks at it, and so does Hasbro, like, okay, D&D is as popular as it is. This is the perfect time to revamp it and come out with a new edition, because people feel like they're getting in on the ground floor, and they feel like that they are at the beginning, which people like. They want to be at the beginning of something. They don't want to be in the middle. They don't want to feel like they've come in, they're 10 years too late. They want to feel like, okay, we're starting right now. I'm with everyone. I'm someone cool, all that fun stuff. However, the problem with doing that is when you announce a new edition, your sales tank. So immediately, and it's happened, like as soon as they even said One D&D, boom, sales have tanked. And because no one wants to, then everyone's waiting. And this always happens. And WoTCs realized, oh crap, from now until 2024, it's going to be pretty hard to keep, D&D afloat. And on top of that, then they had all these like one snafu after another. I mean, this is as bad as it can get, although they seem to keep making it worse. It's like, dude, you have to just, they're really, I don't even know what to say at this point. There's just like endless snafus. They can do it, but they have been doing it in such a poor way that it's only making it harder and harder for them to come out with a new edition. So I see what you're saying is that they don't want a new edition, that like the hardcore players don't, but it's too late, especially now. Now, like a lot of the hardcore players have bailed ship. I mean, if you saw DM's Guild, They just put out a long video 2 days ago explaining that they're moving to Pathfinder.
Oh,
Yeah.
DM layer.
Yeah,
DM
layer,
layer,
sorry,
not
DM
DM
layer.
guild.
Yeah,
that
DM
would
guild.
that would not happen for DM guild.
Yes,
Like,
they're
wait,
happening
well-
to DM's Guild. They're turning into
It's like,
no,
oh
but
man, I missed something.
No, that would be great. Now that would be
It doesn't
news.
even
No,
make
but
any sense since they already have Pathfinder Infinite, which is DM
that's true.
guild for
But you know what I'm getting
Pathfinder.
at? It's like
It would have been funny.
and so
though.
is DM Dave. Like he's moving over too. Like these are big people that are moving over. Like they have to really they went from let's just figure out how to come out with a new edition to now they are fighting like 20 fronts. I mean, think about it. They're fighting the public profile and perception of WoTC. They're fighting the fans. They're fighting their content creators and their influencers, which is the worst thing. Like that is like, I guarantee after that summit, they must have been like, they don't even know what to do. Because if they can't influence those people and win them over, what are they like? Who are they going to like? How are they going to win anyone over?
That's part of the reason why I think the thing that they don't need to do right now is focus on a revision of whatever.
It's too late though.
Is focus on and this is the thing. Like this is the thing that will not get fixed by a PR campaign. This is the kind of thing that needs to get fixed through showing consumer advocacy in some way. They need to show that like they've got support for, and they will support the community, and they want the community to trust them again. They have to rebuild that trust, because what they've done so far and what keeps happening every single day is that there are more and more content creators announcing, I can't support Hasbro anymore. I'm moving on to something else. They're bleeding their influencers here. And it's, I would have originally have said that was hyperbolic like last month, but now having seen like a couple of 100,000+ subscriber channels like Bob World Builder moving over to Dungeon Crawl Classics, I mean, we're seeing the results of the OGL stuff hitting their cultural impact here. They could do Stranger Things. They could still be playing D&D and Stranger Things. I don't know how much longer Critical Role is going to stick around with Wizards of the Coast and D&D. And there's already talks of them like potentially moving over to other systems and making their own system, whatever. But like, I think right now what they have to do is focus on rebuilding trust with the community. And the way that they're trying to go about that with like the Creator Summit isn't the way to go about that. It was nice to see that they were trying, but we're seeing that ultimately, I think that, there was good to come out of it. I don't want to belittle that, but the public trust in general, I think, is still getting knocked every single day. Every time another content creator is going like, well, I'm going to a different system, I think they could reasonably count on about like at least 1 to 5% of that content creators community also going along with them.
Yeah, they're losing a lot. They're in a lot of trouble.
I feel like I agree with Taryn on some points and Steven on other points when they're in contention here in an interesting way. Like of Steven's last spiel, like about the middle section, I really, really agree with, which is that it is a benefit for any RPG company to release something that feels like a launching or starting point, because it feels like it's somewhere that people can start. It creates a set in people's mind that they can collect all of more easily. Like, I don't know how many people here are familiar with, like, there were like these Star Trek figurines back in the day, and they made some that were super hyper exclusive to try to get a lot of money from it. But the minute they did, a huge number of people stopped collecting, period, because they couldn't get those ones, and therefore they couldn't get them all, and therefore they just stopped. I know that's something that happens to me sometimes, where I try to collect everything in a game I'm playing, like a video game. But if I find that there was a missable that I can't get, I just suddenly completely stop, even if it's just one thing. And so having something that feels like a line in the sand that you can be like, this is a starting point, now I'm in from the ground floor, has a lot of value. Another thing that wasn't completely as brought up, although I think Steven, you put it in there a little bit about how they're talking about it being under monetized and the ratio of DMs to players, is that 5e, a lot of players are just like, yeah, I'm fine playing 5e. In fact, 5e just has a lot of people who have never played anything but 5e, and they're just fine. They learned it, they're playing it. It's burning out a lot of DMs, though. Not all DMs. Some DMs are like really into game design and are able to do the extemporaneous game design that 5e kind of makes you do, whether you want to do it or not.
Right.
And those who have moved on to creating third party because they've learned how to be so good at it that they can make awesome content that people want to buy are among the most likely people to be doing fine. But a lot of GMs have said that they can't do that game design, and it's not really just adjudication. It's not really just making your own game, role playing. It's not the typical things that a DM, GM, storyteller, or whatever you want to call them in other game systems is forced to do. It's actually literally like, no, there are no rules for this. I've got to do actual hardcore game design to solve this situation or hand wave it. And so there are people who have been doing numbers in certain like major D&D online gatherings, not just like the louder voices that we hear their actual opinions, but just like data scrape. How many people put the player role versus the DM role in this particular place? And we're seeing ratios that are worse than 50-1, which means that either a lot of those players aren't even actually playing and they want to find a group, or the DMs are running for a drastic number of different people that are out there. It seems to be a crisis of DM burnout, lack of retention, and difficulty in getting people to DM as they see how hard it is to do so. So I feel that there really is, even beyond like the cynical, okay, you can make a lot of money, it's a starting point, and therefore more people will start it. And a lot of your people, maybe not all, but a lot of people will buy the new set because it feels like the kind of product that kind of quote everyone buys, unlike certain other like Tasha Xanathar, maybe not everyone buys it. One advantage to go against what Steven said of having a regular release schedule of a lot of books, one advantage of very few books is that many people buy your very few books, whereas if you have a lot of books, you can't rely on that. But a big set will make money, but it also has a very real possible value. And maybe they won't succeed in this. Maybe they won't even do it. But it has a real possible value of making the game less of a burnout for the DM by putting in guardrails and fixes to the sort of holes or issues for a DM that DMs have been forced to just come up with their own entire game design or find a third party who filled in that niche. And I think that actually could have a measurable beneficial effect. Editions also just eventually go down. And it's a cycle. That's why it's called an edition cycle. And you eventually have to do something that will prop that up, or your curve is just going to go down. And even if it's a curve that's making whatever, what they're like $1 billion now, and not a lot of that is all the tabletop, right? But however much was the tabletop? Was it 200 mil? And it's like, oh no, only 150 mil. Those poor people who still made a huge amount of money. That actually could be a big problem for them if they trend downwards. And if they're looking at the numbers and they have to do something, it would be best to do it in a way that's smart, in a way that's more respectful of the current players, while also hoping to bring in new people. And I think there's ways to go about it. I'm not completely sold that they shouldn't try to do anything at all, because I don't have all of their metrics, but the metrics I do have indicate that there's more of a problem than I think that your overall analysis of it, Taryn, from the people you talk to, seem to say. However, I don't think there's as much as Steven said in his, so I'm kind of in between you two.
Yeah, people are saying that you're hogging the spotlight, Mark, which is only funny because usually I hog the spotlight and everyone yells at me, so I guess we can't win. I guess we just have to have the clock or a mental timer that you and I can't talk more than 2 minutes, Mark, because we go on for like an hour.
Fair enough.
Tiger Eye said, will you review the Orc public draft in the near future? So the Orc came out on Friday. Bad timing. I'm like, really? Friday night? Why the hell did you go? I mean, I know what they do, but whatever. And then I was busy all weekend and I didn't do anything. I read the Orc. We saw it early actually, and I'm trying to get Ryan Dancy on to do it with me, or maybe I'll do it with the lawyer. To be honest, the orc is just the OGL but updated. It actually, like, I thought it was fine. I mean, it's nothing radical. I almost didn't know what to talk about because it's like, okay, it lets you. It's much cleaner in the delineation between what's public and what's private, and it just has, like, I think 3 guardrails, and it's just very cleanly written. And it's just updated for the year 2030 or 2023. But otherwise, it's pretty much the OGL. Like, it's just an updated OGL. So I don't think there was, like, in a weird way, it was so similar that there was almost nothing to say because it feels very much like the OGL and what it was supposed to do. So I do know a lot of people are going to go to it, and how do I put this? There will be more interesting news regarding the orc in a few more weeks or months when it starts getting implemented. That's all I will say on that. So right now, I think it's not as interesting.
You
as
mean
it
when
will
people
be.
start using the license in their own product?
Yes, because there are ramifications of orc that haven't been discussed publicly yet. I don't know if I can discuss them publicly yet. So, but we'll get to it. But right now, I felt it was good, fine, did what it needed to do. Don't know what more to say. I'd rather have a lawyer maybe look at it and give us the nuanced details that I was missing. Ryan Burbridge said for $5, not just that, but the cost of DMs, if you don't have the time or skills to do game design to run, can be prohibitive for people. Yeah, that's why they're doing the virtual tabletop, and I absolutely guarantee that you will be able to play it like a video game, that there will be versions where you don't need a DM, and it'll be like, remember, Neverwinter Nights had this ability. You could play Neverwinter Nights as a single-player MMO, or there's a DM mode, and I think there's a couple of other TTRPGs that allow you to do that. They're not the only one, but there are, like, these DM modes, and I think if they're smart, they're going to have pre-written adventures that are run by the computer, and people like, you can't role play. I'm like, yeah. So you role play together, and maybe you'll come out with, everyone keeps thinking, well, you need to have the DM and you need to have the players. Well, I skipped a super chat. I'll get to your super chat. This is what I would do. I would say, hey, what about a new type of play? And we're like, oh, there's a new way to play role-playing games where it's now cooperative storytelling, where everyone is the GM, and you all just say what you're doing, and you talk about it, and you cooperatively talk, and then the combat is run by the computer. But you don't need to have the GM tell you what happens. You do it yourselves. And that's what's going to happen. And people will be like, huh, and be really upset, but it'll probably work. And I'm not the one who invented this. This already exists, okay? And most games, D&D, I mean, I was playing the other night, and I was thinking, like everyone's totally just GMing theirself. Hell, I played with Mark Seifter, and let me tell you, when I played with Mark Seifter, I was the GM. By the end of that session, and he was the player, he was the GM, and I was just watching him because he was both. He was the GM and the player, which is what happens when the person who writes Pathfinder 2nd Edition rules is playing in your game. But I was just sitting back, not even doing anything.
That's why I try to not play in public games, because
it was funny.
It's a lose-lose situation. If I just sit back and someone gets a rule wrong, then later people will, well, Mark Seifter was at that table and the rule was wrong. And so therefore he must think that was the correct ruling for it. After all, because he didn't say anything. And if I say something, then it gets really interjectory.
But you were
so I found that super chat that we missed.
Yeah, I found that one.
Silverthorn Goodtree said 5e CR has huge problems at the power level at level 14 plus with no balance.
Yes, everyone knows that. That's why all their adventures stop at 10th level. Everyone says that. If you look at the metrics go down a cliff. It's like people play D&D, it's like 1 through 10, and then it goes whoop, and then everyone stops. Like, although the people that work with us on our 5th edition stuff, they only play high level D&D. They only play like 18th, 19th, 20th level. So I don't know what they're doing in their games, but they like to play the crazy high levels. I will say we are playing level 14, 15 Pathfinder. I mean, it's still pretty balanced, and oh boy, those spells at those high levels, holy crap. What were you doing, man?
They're wild. They're
those
outrageous.
8-level spells. Oh my god, are they powerful?
Maze is just
Maze is too powerful. Maze is too powerful. I actually don't use Maze because it's too powerful.
I think that some of those high level spells are too powerful, honestly, but they're even more too powerful in Pathfinder 1st and in 5th edition than they are in
Oh, I know. Like, I actually used Maze, and then, well, because taking someone out of the fight is basically killing someone, and it's way too much. But I will tell you the spell that I never saw before, and I now on my top 5 favorite spells of all time is Visions of Danger.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
You know it's a bad spell when it's 3 actions to cast, but because it basically it's like a fireball that never leaves, because it's a 30-foot burst. It does 8d8 mental damage, will save, and if you are in the burst when it's created, you enter the burst or start your turn in the burst, you have to do a will save, and it took up the entire battlefield. So they're like, "Oh my god, stop it!" I can't. They couldn't get out of it. They did start disbelieving, and they were fighting worms that walk, which of course are immune to it. So, God, that spell is horrible, man. I blame you, Mark. Did you write that spell? Who wrote that spell?
I think that some of those awesome illusion editions were from Logan.
Oh, okay.
I actually did write the conversion of probably at least 90% of the core rulebook spells, but it so happens that the coolest illusion spells were written by Logan.
That Visions of Danger.
I think that
Holy
Visions
crap.
of Danger was probably one of them. But
that is bad.
I now cannot remember, but if you made me say, I would say Logan probably wrote it.
That's an OP spell. That because it's like that I've seen a lot. That one's like oof. Because he just keeps going.
I love those ones with just the like very, this almost sounds like a Bob Dylan song title kind of a spell name. Where,
yeah.
Like, I mean, D&D's got, Visions of the Blue Veil, and I'm like, ooh, wait, what? Like, give me that flavor. I love that,
We got a couple more super chats. Whole bunch.
Let's see. Was there Tiger Eye saying, "I agree, there's more legalese that was needed due to the OGL stuff from WoTC"? So examples in plain English would be really helpful for the orc axe. The axe, which is their FAQ, because it's the answers and explanations, and the "and" is a little X.
Yeah.
And so it's orc axe.
Well, they are going whole hog on this legal thematic with this. I love
might
it.
as well.
They had examples that were in there that were like it was like Hamlet, the rotten Denmark setting. For example, you could say that it was orc content with the and then they had like random Shakespeare reference classes, but that it was not orc content of the characters of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, or those are product identity.
I don't understand. It's like when WoTC does it, everyone cringes. When Paizo does it, everyone's like, "Oh, that's so cute."
The difference, I think, was that it wasn't cute when Wizards used Brunar Battlehammer as an example for how they were going to take everybody's money.
Yeah, that's true.
They're like, Brunar is a third-party creator, and now we're going to take 25% of Brunar's money over top of this amount. Like, I'm not exaggerating. That is how they did it. Whereas it's a lot cuter when it's just talking about which things are product identity or not.
Well, that even shows you how tone deaf they were, because they're trying to say, yes, as you pay us more and more money, you level up. Or I'm like, what? And they said, oh, because we love to gamify everything. And I was like, oh my god, that's the thing you don't gamify. All right. Tiger Eyes wrote for $5. I agreed. Dr. B. Oh, you just wrote that. Yeah. You just
I got that one. But there's another one after that from Krieg. The I
Creek
think
the
it's like
Psycho, yeah.
Psycho, but it's like Psychic and then Co.
Mhm.
If the VTT project was instead a video game marketed with a DM mode add-on, I think people's opinion would be different than it is now.
You see, they can't market it as a video game because they have to do what they're doing, which is it's going to be a stealth video game, but it's a VTT, and it's going to be they're making.
I think they want it to be the main platform.
Yes, they want it to.
What's
yeah.
the stigma there? Like, I'm like, okay, if they call it a video game, then like, what's
Because then it's not
what's
an
the big
MMO, and then
worry?
why? And then because it's not D&D, and D&D is not a video game.
It's a weird attack phrase that has been used of where you claim the weird attack that has been made against editions of almost every tabletop RPG in existence when someone doesn't like it is to say that it isn't a tabletop RPG, but is instead a pick whatever you want. It is instead a board game. It is instead a miniatures war game. It is instead a video game. It is instead an MMO.
Right.
Any other type of game, it's sort of an identity thing where by denying the game the identity that the game thinks that it has and wants to have, you're kind of like otherizing it as a type of insult. Even if like there's nothing like even if the same person who says that plays a bunch of video games and really is obviously not like against video games in general, they use it as a slur.
Right.
And that's just sort of a tradition that has happened. It's not a good tradition, but it's traditionally what happens for tabletop games.
Yeah.
Like, it's the kind of thing that I'm like, okay, well, if it is a video game, because like WoTC seems very reprehensive to like or apprehensive rather to yeah, there we go. Yeah, either works really, I guess. But to yeah, they seem really apprehensive to like embrace the idea that yeah, this is a video game or whatever. You can call it software. If it's software for a game, whatever. Like, okay, you know, so I think the hang up is like if they're worried about like if we call this a video game, people are gonna be upset. I'm like, I don't know, maybe, but like, okay, so then we'll get over it. We'll move on. It's a VTT. I just yeah. People have all kinds of like okay, tabletop simulator. I mean, I guess I would call it a video game. We play games in it, sure, but like it's a tool. I kind of prefer to think of it as a tool, right? So if they market it as a video game, I think that does kind of give it the air more of like some aspects of the game will be run not by the game engine, which is usually the game engine, which is usually like the arbiter. The dungeon master. Oh wait, did you guys freeze? Oh wait, okay, there we go.
We're just not moving.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh crap, wait, am I just talking? Okay. I think there are some aspects of it that may yeah. I was like, man, he's good at that. There are some aspects of it that may that will be automated, you know. As long as it's not all fully automated, then like, you know, it's a tool set. I just sometimes worry what getting to the heart of like whether or not it's a video game, if that's really is it like an important discussion to be having around it?
Definitely not.
I don't
just
think
one that will always rise to the cream. It will rise. I mean, it's not really the cream, but it will rise to the top anyway due to the fact that, like I said, calling a game a different type of game is used as a slur.
Yeah,
an identity-based slur for the game, and therefore that argument will just rise up, and it'll happen, and people who are defending the game recognize it as a slur and therefore will try to say that it isn't, even if a game kind of is sort of more in that mode and it's like it's a problem. It's hard to be like, yes, for this tabletop RPG does have a very good miniature wargame aspect to it that is done extremely well, but it's hard. You can't actually say that easily in those conversations because it's become something else a little bit more dogmatic with lines drawn in the sand, and it can be frustrating in those conversations.
Yeah.
And actually someone said an interesting point here. that look at 3.5, it's like when 3.5 came out, did anyone, first everyone bought the 3.5 rulebooks. Did anyone use the 3.0 rulebooks? No. No one did. Like, I don't
No,
know
but they
anyone.
said it was compatible.
Oh,
That's
it
the
was.
key. That's the
sort
key.
of.
It
Yeah.
was. You
Yeah.
could have used them, but a
Yeah.
lot of stuff in the 3.0 books was kind of broken because they
Yeah.
didn't know the system as well
Yeah.
as when they were writing 3.5, like
Yeah.
especially the small, thin, flat
But you know
books,
what?
flat books.
In
And
the
so
world
people
of,
used it as a way to wipe the slate clean.
look, in the world of software, this happens all the time. Think about like when Windows gets updated, or when an iOS gets updated every single year, and every couple of years they have major updates that if you do not update your software, it will not work with iOS. And you know, they are kind of going to have to go to the software model, which is like, okay, the game is 10 years old. Okay, D&D, it's grow or die. Like, they have to change. I know people are like, oh, it's fine as it is. It's not. It really isn't. And now people are looking for excuses to leave the game, and they need to come out with excuses for you to come back to the game. And if they have an excuse, which is, hey, look, we listen to you, we have the rules are much cleaner now, they're smoother, we even, yeah, there's new rule books, but we broke them out into smaller versions so you can buy them and only get what you need. You don't need to buy all 5 rule books, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're already starting down this path. Look at how they were marketing the new monster manual. I mean, you were there, Taron. Like, they were like, it's all new art, it's fantastic, it's got 400 monsters, it's amazing, it's the best and biggest one we've ever done. That's not an accident, okay? That's one of the things they actually did correctly. Like, they're trying to start selling you to get this new book, and they're going to do the same thing with DM guide and the player's handbook. They're going to be like, it has this, it has that, it has this. You guys really want it. It's going to be awesome. And then while you're at it, maybe play it and use it. That's the thing. As long as you buy the book. Yeah, I saw somebody was like, their books were getting banned. They're like, I hate you so much, I'm going to buy your books and burn them. And the author's like, that's a great idea. Buy 50 of them and burn them.
Yeah.
It's like, buy as many as you want and burn them all. Like, they just want them sold.
The thing I would recommend is, like, to people that are, I think this is actually the most important year in terms of voting with your dollar in regards to D&D content, because they're going to be using this year for the roadmap for how stuff in the future is going to sell. And I promise you, execs at Hasbro, if they start seeing a major dip in sales of all the new books they keep throwing out there, like they've already seen the dip in the projections from the movie, something will shake up. I think that this immediate year is going to be the most important moment in terms of how much influence the economy is going to have on the future of the game. Like, this is a unique moment, I think, that we're having right now. So, to people that are like, I guess I would just say, I don't really have a suggestion as to how you should do that, but just be aware that you as a consumer out there, you're probably going to have an impact on the future of at least D&D based on how you spend your money this year in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also going to be harder moving forward, and especially into the revision, for them to attribute it to one particular thing. Like, when everybody was canceling those subscriptions during the OGL crisis, it was very obvious that it was from the OGL crisis. It wasn't from the fact that there was a lot of inflation, which there was around that time, or other economic factors. Whereas if they see in 2024 that sales are down, they could conclude a lot of things that may or may not be correct, depending on if they're willing to do a lot of market research that I don't know if they are. They might think maybe people are still angry at us from the PR reasons. They might think maybe people aren't as into getting a new edition revision as we thought. They might, there become more factors to it, so it's a little more muddled, or at least muddied, than when it was crystal clear for the OGL. But that doesn't mean that it's nothing. It doesn't mean it won't be a data point that could influence their actions in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, and someone said something about how that the player's handbook was like in like the top seller on Amazon last week. I guarantee it's. But the thing is, the D&D the player's handbook has always been. I think it's never been out of the top 100 or top 1,000 ever in history. It's always a bestseller, and it's just because people buy it. Players' handbooks always do incredibly well. Like they always have, and they always will. I guarantee the D&D movie definitely it didn't hurt. Okay, I mean, yeah, it didn't do as well as they were hoping, but it also didn't do as poorly. It could have gone a lot worse. And strangely, I was looking at Box Office Mojo and the worldwide.
But do you think
sales.
it's going to make money now? Or is it still
I can tell
lose?
you, it's actually not that hard to figure out. If you go to Box Office Mojo, because that tells you everything you need to know, it currently has $125 million worldwide. So it is about to break its budget and break even for the movie itself, but then it really needs to make 300 million. That's the back of the napkin number. I don't have it. You can figure it out. It's like Kickstarter. You can figure out the formula. Like they know how much it's going to end. It probably will lose a little bit, but it's also not going to. It's going to be right in the middle, which is like the worst because it's like, okay, it wasn't a huge hit, but also wasn't a huge failure. And of course, it came out between John Wick 4, which, by the way, no one, and I mean no one, thought that was going to do. Even they thought it was going to do okay. Okay, that thing exploded and did 270 million and did like 73 million its opening weekend. That was way past what anyone expected. Yeah. So that sort of messed them up. And then, of course, they came after Super Mario Brothers. That was it was just bad time. I mean, I don't know. You know what? I think, whatever. They moved it to the end of, I think they thought like a lot of word of mouth and maybe, who knows what they had other things going. I mean, geez, like Super Mario Brothers movie already made $420 million in less than a week.
The numbers on this, on the dailies were like Dungeons and Dragons has made 1.5 million. The Super Mario Brothers movie made 20 million in the last day.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. But the thing is, the D&D movie was really, really good. And that's the other problem. It's like, okay, the movie's really good. We spent a ton of marketing. We had to come out 3 weeks early. We've had every possible marketing tie and thing you can imagine.
How are they going to do better than that?
They won't do. I mean, this is good. This is one of the best marketing / co-brand / everything they did was perfect.
Did you see the billboard they did for it in like Japan? That was it like looked like the billboard had it was like one of those video billboards, and it had a wall on the billboard, and then a dragon broke out of the wall, and it seemed like it was coming out of the billboard and attacking. It was
they have one of those in Manhattan now too. I mean, they're not going to do any better. But what can happen, and this is what's going to probably happen, is the first movie, like the first John Wick, did okay. And this probably is going to do well enough that they can do another one. They'll probably have to get some more backers and more producers on this. But they can do it, and they probably have everyone signed for multi-year contracts, so they have the cast, and so they can do a second one. And then the second one can do better than the first one. And if they're smart and it gets good word of mouth and it does well in retail, and it does well in digital sales and streaming and cable and all that, that the second one will actually do better. And that can happen in this market. That does happen. There's a lot of movies that I mean, it can go the other way. Traditionally, it goes the other way, but things have changed now. I think they're going to make another one. It's done well enough, and I think they've also got a core base, which of like people like myself. I mean, I have friends who've already seen it twice. I have a lot of friends who saw it twice. Like they really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. But the point is that they are selling the studio, but that doesn't matter. They can have someone else do it because Paramount is like also coming out with a D&D television show. I think later this year. So like they're coming out with a lot of D&D related products and tie-ins, and they are really banking on D&D becoming this new game that is going to take over the world and become something that casual people. The problem is that they are pissing off their core base, and their core base, I hate to say it, is actually a very small percentage. I guarantee all those people who bought the player's handbook this last couple of weeks, none of those were the core base. None of those were us. I guarantee is there a single person who's watching this stream right now, did any of you buy a core rulebook last week? No. These are all new people, okay? And that's what they want. They want the new people. But the problem is that new people are excited about the hobby, and then they go to YouTube and they're like, okay, how should I DM? And they're like, we all hate Wizards and we all hate D&D. We're all moving to Pathfinder and we're all moving to this. We're all moving to that. They're like, maybe I shouldn't be part of the D&D club. It sounds like they're not cool anymore. Maybe I'm in the wrong club.
So there is a super chat from Dragoon of Kyrie. As long as the second isn't released between two massive releases again, don't let it become the Horizon Zero of movies.
Yes. Horizon Zero Dawn, which, by the way, I'm playing through the second game right now. So Horizon Zero Dawn, one of my favorite games of all time. The first one came out on the same day as Zelda for the Switch, like one of the highest ranked games of all time. Yeah. I got that game and then I didn't play it for a year because I had to play Zelda. I played it again and I loved it. I've actually played it twice. The sequel came out last year on the exact same day that Elden Ring came out. Dude, what are you doing? You came out with the two most popular games in the history of video games. And their game is superb. And of course I didn't play it because I had to play Elden Ring and I couldn't get away from that itch. But I just started Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West last week and I love it. And I can't stop playing it. I'm like, dude, stop coming out with your game at the same time as the number one and number two best games of all time.
Yeah, the thing they should have done is did what Animal Crossing and Doom did, where they did like a cross promotional thing, and like you had like some of the you had like Isabel from Animal Crossing like shooting demons in hell with like the Doom Slayer. It was great.
Yeah, well, it's owned by Sony. I mean, God, the game is so good. It's really good. But yeah, I agree. Is that it's hard to time these movies to have them come out at the right time. And you know, the big thing that hurt them was John Wick. Like John Wick, I think hurt them really bad. Because you know, people might not be as inclined to go see a movie after they just saw a movie, and a lot of people went to go see John Wick. So. But
I think they really wanted an MCU is what they wanted. I mean, that's
they
what
still
all
do.
These, yeah, it's what all these like. If somebody's starting up a franchise right now, especially attached to an IP, everyone's shooting for the MCU. We want over a decade full of crazy number one in the box office movies that we know that we have a committed set of like 20 million people going at whatever. But chasing this dream and modeling every movie after that, I mean, I don't know. Like, I prefer to see companies that are doing something new and fresh. Like, I love seeing innovation like that, and a lot of the stuff that we seem to be seeing out of WoTC is a lot of copy pasting.
Yeah, but it worked so well. We see if I'm an exec, and I'm gonna say, yeah, but it's worked so well. Look, we're the number one game of all time, and we're the biggest RPG in history. It's obviously working. You might not like it, but everyone else does.
Yeah, and I would say then keep making, you know, content for that number one game you've got.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, make content for the game, and then if you want to do the supplementary stuff to like support it, cool, do that. But like, boy, I don't know about spending $500 million on that though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's they're in a really bad spot, and it's all of their own doing. It's like, you know, again, I think I'd be very curious to see in the alternate world, the alternate universe where the OGL went through. They signed over all those content creators. They successfully said OGL is dead. Long live OGL. Now you have to, you know, sign on with us, and you're paying us your percentage, and we're going to come out with 6th edition, and you're all going to pretty much go out of business because we're going to control you all. And now everyone has to play. If you want to play D&D, you got to play 6th edition, whether you like it or not. Too bad. And I mean, it's like the more I think about it, I'm like, what were they thinking? I really just don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know what the perfect world was for them, and if all that would have played out properly. But
yeah, I don't understand. Like, what was there? There's obviously slides out there. There's obviously slides, and there's Excel spreadsheets, and there's projections, because this is not something they just would have done.
Oh, it's clear that destroying that entire market was not to their advantage. So my imagined picture of their perfect world would be one where they were they had all of the control, but they ruled as what they felt like was a benevolent dictator of that control. So they made lots of side deals for people who are like, okay, we understand that your third party company would be immediately destroyed with 25%. So yeah, we'll take 5%. We'll take 0 for the next year.
Well, they did say that. Yeah, they did say that.
We'll take 0 for the next year, even though you're above that. We'll give you a side deal, and it's actually a really good deal that won't take any money or something like that. They might have done that to keep the market alive with people they liked. But the minute they decided that they didn't like you for whatever reason, that like maybe you were somewhat critical of them in certain ways, or you put out something they didn't like, they would immediately stop that and be like, well, now we can fall back on this 25% that instantly kills you. It was the contract you signed initially, and we're not renewing our nicer one that allows you to survive, and therefore your company is gone. And so basically they would have had full control while still, in my opinion, of what their idyllic scenario is. It still has a vibrant third-party market that they can just kind of, as the gardener, prune in whatever way they want.
Well, I also think they wanted to put all the VTTs out of business. I think that was their true. I think that's what they really want to do, because even 1.2 was like, okay, you can still make your stuff, but VTTs can't exist because they're NFTs. And I'm like, oh my god, that's what they really cared about.
They were hyper focused on that in OGL 1.2. Yeah. Whenever I saw that, the whole time I was just thinking like, oh my god, we uncovered the secret. That it felt like it was like the twist where it was like all their plans unraveled.
Yeah. Because I don't know. I guess because their mind. This is what happens. Is like they're spent 146 million on D&D Beyond. They're spending hundreds of millions on the VTT. So someone's there saying, we can't have competition. You need to make sure that we're the only game in town. Right. And they're like, well, we can't. There's 100 VTTs that are already out. There's thousands of people. It's like we can't control. We don't control the market. We don't control the narrative. They're like, well, why? Because of the OGL. What's the OGL? I can just see it. They're like, well, it's this agreement that it's like, and they looked, it's like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. Why would we ever give out control to other people? Can we kill this thing? That's what I guarantee they're saying. It's like, well, no, not really. It's like, well, there's got to be a way. We're a huge billion-dollar company. We'll just push people around. Of course we could do it.
Bring me the head of the lawyer that wrote this thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we signed up to this. Is terrible. It's like, what can we do? It's like, well, we can come up with a new edition, and we'll come out with a 6th edition, and we can come up with a brand new OGL, and then we can control everything. It's like, yeah, but then it can still play the 5th edition. Why would we come out with 6th edition with 5th edition still around? That's still not good enough. No, we got to kill 5th edition. We got to make it that we're the only game in town. So we are going to say no more 5th edition, no more OGL, and if they don't like it, they can sue us. And that's what they tried to do. It didn't work out at all. And now they are, everything stems from that. Yeah. What was it like in the summit with like we talked a lot about the beginning part of the summit, but what about the end part when after all the air was let out of the room and people were more relaxed and it was the afternoon and they could actually talk about D&D and what they were going to do with the game? Like, were people even caring at that point, or were they just sort of like so fed up with everything?
People, I mean, if I'm recalling a lot of this correctly, like, yeah, I mean, it's been a week. I've got the video and everything I could review. But basically, if I'm remembering this right, there weren't a whole lot of directed questions in regards to how will X content work, like in regards to this? What are you all planning on doing with this? It didn't seem so much that people were super interested in upcoming content that they hadn't showcased just yet. And to be fair, a lot of that was like it was a presentation, right? And it was late, and I mean, a lot of us had planned to be there until like 6:30, and suddenly we're looking at the clock and it's rolling up on 9, and we're like, "Oh my god, I've got like articles to write, or I've got whatever to do."
Mm-hmm.
We still haven't had dinner. I haven't peed in 4 hours, you know. So a lot of people, I think, were just sort of worn thin by that point. But in regards to like, I mean, the presentation, the way that it went, they were showing off new stuff, and once the tension, it was good once the tension had gotten out of the room. Once the tension had gotten like flushed out of the room, you could tell that they were willing to have a more like earnest, just kind of conversation back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But they were really into their presentation. It was really clear they have a goal set in mind for this thing. You know, I think from there on, me as a designer, I would just kind of like get more critical on what I was seeing that they were going to put into the game. But you know, I mean, we are seeing like some of the fixes that were already kind of home rules for a lot of people, I think, are getting implemented into the game. Monk is getting a much needed buff with, you know, their martial arts die starting at a D6 instead of a D4.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we knew that this one was coming for years. Eldritch Blast is just going to be core to all warlocks. Something that should have just been. Yeah, I think that this is pretty much clearly admitting there's a flaw in the design of the warlock that should have just been a core class feature.
And it was in all previous incarnations of the warlock, weirdly enough.
And you know, it's just I think they're doing the new weapon mastery system. I say new, they're borrowing elements from Pathfinder. You know, even me as like a content creator, like that focuses a lot on D&D, and as a designer for like this system, there's a lot of it I'm seeing that I'm just kind of like, I feel like they have some interesting ideas happening, but it's also like I'm just kind of hesitant to really be like wooed back into the game right now. You know, and I'm not saying that to like dog on WoTC. It's legitimately the way I'm feeling. If it was like, oh yeah, I'm excited to go back and play it, cool, I would let you know. Like, yeah, okay, I'm good for more D&D content. I just don't know.
Well, again, I think it came down to them. They just didn't understand the audience, because the first thing they were talking about, it sounds like, is all the virtual stuff, because that's what they're excited about. Even in their invite, they're all like, "We're going to talk about the virtual tabletop." Like, it's like, because they're subconsciously, that's their goal. Like, whether they can't seem to figure out. And they're not saying it, but they're like, because that's all they care about. They don't even seem to care about. Like, they don't even talk about. You know, they talked about the new games coming out. Fine. They're coming out with the new books in 2023 and 24. Fine. That makes sense. I mean, but then, you know, they don't even talk about like, oh, this is how let's go through the play test and how it's working and what our goals are and the plan. Like, no, they're just like, oh yeah, that's like, oh yeah, that's here too, by the way. Like, you know, it's like it's an afterthought of an afterthought. And when you feel that, when you act like that, it's hard for even the people who are interested to feel like, wow, why should I be interested in this if you're not interested in this?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big problem.
And you know, the way that things were closing out, I you know, you could just really tell everyone was exhausted. Like whenever we came back after the you know, after we had the Q&A, it just, you could tell people were tired. And then especially after the presentation that they were doing, it kind of seemed like people were pretty tapped on like interest overall.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be because of timing or whatever was going on, but you know, lots of people were hungry. You can tell WoTC was like, we're running low on time in the room. What should we do here? So, but I mean, in regard, like, if chat had any questions about like what did I see or whatever, I tried to live tweet as much of it as I could, like as quick as I could. But if chat's got any questions about like what all was in it, I'm let me know. I'm happy to try and fill in whatever I can on it, or if you guys do it all.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think they were trying to cram too much in, and they should have started out with the D&D stuff. And
I don't even know if they were trying to cram too much in, like, intentionally.
No, not intentionally.
As opposed to, like, there were 5 to 7 different groups within WoTC, each of which had one big thing that they wanted the summit to be. And when you combine that all into together, it is sort of like it's way too much at that point, because it can't be all things to all people.
I mean, they should have just done the D&D stuff first, and then just like, I mean, it's like, I get it. I mean, they really are. It's like, you think they're pushing the VTT hard now? You ain't seen nothing yet. Like, wait, you just wait. Like, that is all they're going to talk about. And it's like, and I think, again, I think that's all they wanted to talk about, and they're realizing that no one seems to care, or it's like definitely not resonating with people like us, and they're like, crap, it's like it's like they've lost the narrative in so many ways that I can't even I'm having trouble figuring out how to fix any of this or how they can fix this, because they're fighting so many battles. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's like they really, I've not seen a company screw up this much in a long time. It's like, it's kind of fascinating.
It was like, we went into like the VTT presentation. You could tell everyone was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna ask you questions about the VTT. And we started asking questions, and they didn't give us answers. We were like, oh, okay, well, we're interested in the pricing structure. Oh, we haven't thought of that yet. Oh, okay, well, what are the recommended specs so far that you're working with? Oh, we haven't thought about that.
I was blown away by the fact that they hadn't thought about whether or not people would want to stream it on OBS.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it. I know we talked about it last week with you, Taryn, but like, how is it even possible that they didn't consider that as one of the main things that's gonna happen?
And the stuff that like may not be fleshed out, that's fine. Like, okay, we can understand that like there's some stuff in it, whatever, but like, just say that. Don't just be like, oh, okay, well, we're this far in development. If I was like, okay, what are the recommended specs for the PCs or whatever, they can say, well, currently we have it running on these Alienware laptops that you all saw, and the development PCs, whatever. What you all have been seeing is in engine. It's rendered, but it's playable, because people got their hands on the demo. But like, even if they were to say that, but like, here's what we are trying to reduce it down to. We want to get it running as optimally as we can, but here's what we know. This is the minimum. You must have specs in order to just get Unreal Engine going. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even if they could have just given us that kind of a target range, would have been nice. But instead, it was just sort of like dismissive of like, oh, we didn't know you guys would want this like information. Pricing structure, it was like, we don't even know what like goal they're aiming towards. So sorry, allergies right now. It was because we kept asking the questions, and they weren't giving us like straight up answers, that it was like, oh, okay, well, this isn't what you all want to, or you all say that you want to talk about this, but you're not letting us know anything. So we're just going to start asking other questions. Like what were we supposed to do? Be like, oh, well, does the VTT have blue dice in it? I you know what I mean? Like, those wouldn't have been the important questions to ask.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't understand. Because as I said, it's like, why didn't they have someone from the software development team there? Because these are very simple questions. I mean, this is all very simple stuff that we talked about last week that I could answer, and I'm not even on the team, and I guarantee it's not that hard. And this is standard for all video games. Like, if you go,
I remember, Steven, you were shocked that the person they were talking to was the lead developer. Given
it was the lead developer.
Well, it's like, well, then what is he doing? Because, okay, at E3, which doesn't exist anymore, whenever you'd see these, builds, the beta builds, alpha builds, they were always on these like $10,000 computers, and everyone knows that's like, of course, these are horribly optimized games. They can barely run on these things, but they also know that that's not what it's going to be. It's almost like no one asks that question at E3 because people just know, like, it's going to run on an Xbox. It's going to run on a PlayStation 4 or 5. Like, they just know it will. And that's part of the optimization process at the end. Why didn't they just say that? Like, I'm like, they just say, oh yeah, for now, this is what it has to be on because nothing's been optimized. And don't worry, it's like, that's part of the process. And we're, hoping to aim. You don't have to commit. You don't have to say, well, it's going to say, we're hoping to aim on the vast majority of, consumer-based laptops and hopefully phones and consoles. And that is what our goal is. Done. Like, okay, was that so hard? I made that up on like the spot here. Okay. It's like, exactly. I'm like, they're so terrified. I'm like, wow, what is going on over there? If they can't answer questions like that, then how are they going to be able to answer hard questions? I don't even think that's a hard question. I think that's the bare minimum. Should be
something that they knew that they expected to have. So Steph L gave a super chat that said Kickstarter, which was apparently offline, is back online. So you can support
everyone broken. You broke it. Stop breaking your Kickstarters. By the way, whenever I'm doing a Kickstarter and it goes offline, I get a heart attack. I'm like, no.
Oh no.
It's like I hate when that happens.
It looks like people in chat are also incredulous about the same thing, or like Angry Cat was saying, if you don't have answers to the questions, what questions do you want me to ask? And another person was saying, Rex Teal was like, if they didn't answer questions, what was the point of inviting people to be there? And I think the point was that they wanted to, I think they were expecting people to show off, that they could show off, they could kind of do the dog and pony show that they wanted to do, and that people would look at it and get this sort of exclusive first look. Right. But even then, they said you could ask questions, and they let you submit the questions in advance.
Well, and
right?
Another thing is like, based off of who all they invited, it was also just really weird that like these weren't things that they were expecting in a way. Like, please tell me why Wizards of the Coast would have invited me to this thing unless it was like, oh yeah, we want to talk about like potentially rebuilding the influencer and like Wizards of the Coast relationship after the OGL stuff. If you look at like who all's invited, and it's like, Bob World Builder, Ted from Nerd Immersion, Dungeon Dad, these are all 8,000 plus subscriber YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that were in actual plays, or they are larger like POC names in like the TTRPG scene, or there were a couple of like third-party publishers, but if I was to compare myself to like Griffin Saddlebag, I am small fry. I'm not, Griffin Saddlebag, or they had Dungeon Dudes and Ginny D and all that stuff, and then you had me. And here I am, 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. I saw stuff over on the DMs Guild, 600 followers over on Twitch. And I was just kind of like, well, the only reason I think that you want me here is because I was the one that dropped the leak on the OGL stuff. But you don't want to talk about the OGL stuff? About what happened? Why am I here? Like, I also just felt really confused. Like, why would I get the invite unless you all wanted to talk about this stuff? But you apparently weren't ready to talk about this stuff? What? It's just, I thought it was super weird. I think if you look at me in particular, compared to the other names that were there, some of the other people make sense as like journalists for like, writing for Ian World or something like that. But like, I'm the one standout that I just think like, why did I get the invite? You know, like it's just
maybe
so
everyone was like that. Maybe it's imposter syndrome, and everyone was like, "Well, I see why they invited Indestructible Boy, but why did they invite me?"
I just think like if this was supposed to be like, okay, well, we want to show off our products and everything that we got going on, I was like, was I supposed to be wooed by this or something? I don't know.
I don't know. It sounds like, I mean, also you need to have a supreme air of confidence when you do these. Like, you really have to feel like you are in control of the room and you control the narrative and you're controlling what is being said. And immediately they start off with technical problems. I was like, oh boy, that's the oh God. I mean, I don't know, how is that even possible? I mean,
these kind of things always start with technical problems, so I really believe it.
I agree and disagree. Is that if you hire the right people, like I do corporate. My old gig before I did now, I used to do corporate presentations for Fortune 500s. And I was literally in charge of it. And I sort of got, I was 23 years old at the time. And these are like, billion-dollar companies for ad agencies. And I used to have backups of backups of backups of backups. Like, I had so many backups. And I have seen things you cannot imagine. And I have learned how to make sure that does not happen. Because there was once we did this thing, it was actually for Volkswagen, and they flew everyone from all the remote offices from the world to the Volkswagen headquarters, and they flew me, and back then there was no laptops, so they flew me and all the computers with the big ass monitors. They flew all these computers, they flew everything out there, and there I'm with all the corporate execs from DDB Worldwide, everywhere in the world. I'm this 23-year-old kid, like, they're all looking at me like I'm running the thing, and I'm like, oh my God, there better not be a crash because I'm gonna get killed. I was like, they would fire me, they're gonna kill me. And so my point is, they should not have had technical problems. It's just that simple. Okay? Or if you do have technical problems, they last a few seconds, not minutes or half an hour.
Yeah, we were definitely waiting for, I mean, the first time it was like, in order for us just to get into the thing, it took us around 30 minutes.
Yeah. That's 30 minutes. You might as well be 3 million years. I mean,
yeah,
forget it.
There were several times. I mean, I was thinking, like, do I leave? Like, what do I do here,
Ginny D did. Ginny D left. She's like, I don't have time for this.
So what I think happened, I know that she was there early on.
Yeah.
And I know that because I think she was given an in-person invite.
Right.
And then she wasn't able to go because she had a wedding or something to go to that same weekend or whatever, or that week. And I think by due to all the technical issues that were going on, I mean, I don't know, it might have been a completely separate thing, but she may not have felt like it was worth her time. Like I would get that. I damn near got to that point where I was like, I'm kind of checking out. You know, I got pretty tired.
That's the last thing, right? And you want to be excited. You want them to be, you commanding the room, and you're like, yeah, we're showing this, and we're going to show you this. This is what we're going to do. And then you just keep people always be always be always be escalating. ABE, always be escalating. Always have the next coolest thing. It's like, you think this is cool? We need to see this one, and then this, and this, and then we're going to finish it off with a bang. And instead, it sounded like the technical problems, and then here's the VTT, and we can't answer any of your questions, and now we're getting ambushed by OGL questions, and now we got to sit down and like everyone's vote. I'm like, oh my God, they have the I don't know what you would say, the inmates are running the asylum. Not that we're inmates, but you know what I mean. Right. The place is, but I feel like that is a microcosm, and why I'm bringing it up, of what's happening with the brand. It's like they can't control something as easy to control as a summit with influencers that they invited on their home turf, and they can't control that. How on earth are they going to be able to control this, which is a new version of D&D?
Yeah, and even looking back on like some of the presentations that they were doing, like 2019, 2018, where like they tried doing like live stream or similar like events, and you could like now it's a running gag where it's like technical issues are always on everybody's like D&D presents bingo cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So technical issues are always a thing that whatever, but it seems like they learned from that and they started doing pre-recorded segments or whatever. But we also know that we're at an age where, like, especially with Wizards of the Coast, look, they had 140 people that were at that summit that could have easily helped them out with running that summit, live streaming it. That could tell them, like, hey, guys, these mics do not sound good online. They might get your voice projected into this room, but whenever that's going through like a webcam mic or whatever it is that they had us going through, this sounds terrible. So we can instead, let's get you guys on some lavalier mics and, you know, whatever. There were just a lot of there were just a lot of ways in which this thing just, yeah, potato camera quality. It was a mess. I don't know. I would have expected more out of Wizards of the Coast.
Well, anyhow, they're coming out with a new version of D&D. Everyone check that out, coming next year in 2024. I'm sure it will be great, and I'm sure it's going to answer all your pressing questions about 5th edition. Don't worry. We make sure that we do things right at WoTC. And let me tell you,
I bet it's going to have a lot of quality of life improvements in certain areas that are pain points for people. I mean, they're play testing it out. The question is just like exactly what effect it's going to have on the ecosystem. I think it's going to be lucrative for them to have released it compared to not. Obviously, everything has gone down compared to what it would have been if they had not sparked the OGL controversy and lost so much goodwill. But I think that they're going to make money on it compared to everything else being the same, but them just being like, you know what, we heard everybody about this, so we're just pulling this entire idea and we're not going to release our vision in 2024. And instead we'll do more other books that are not that. I think they're going to make more. So we'll see. I mean, actually, they won't have to report exactly where they made their money from, but I guess they're publicly traded. So maybe we'll see what happens.
So How to RPG says, I understand some people ask self-serving zinger questions during the Creator Summit. That doesn't sound useful. Yeah, well, guess what? You got to be prepared for that. And you know what? Really good media-trained people can handle those. Trust me. There's a lot of people out there who are very good at this, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the people working at WoTC. You can get someone, and you can. Okay, I've seen this. This is very common in the video game space. Is that if you've seen the E3 presentations, is sometimes they would have some of these people come up and talk, and they were not good, because they're in charge of the video game company. They're not good speakers. And occasionally you'll get somebody who's like a dynamite at both. Or you get a Keanu Reeves who comes up and sells you, Cyberpunk. And oh my God, does that guy have charisma? And you get stuff like that. I mean, they could have brought in Joe Manganiello and have him there. And suddenly, let me tell you, it's kind of a manipulative move. It probably would have worked because people would have been like, oh, that is cool. I want to talk to you. And he can then talk about it and go from his passion. And then if someone asks him a hard-hitting question, he can easily deflect that and say something. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm not really involved with that. I can't really talk to that. I'm sure these guys, they love the product. They love D&D. I'm sure they're going to work it out. And I know you've had problems with them in the past, but like, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't believe in the WoTC staff and I didn't believe in 5th edition. And let me tell you, I think you guys really just have to, really give them the benefit of the doubt. And, you can see they brought you here today and they really want to make sure that they're putting out the best product possible, that they're getting feedback from you and the community and the other influencers. And that is why we're here today, to really help and create the best product possible. How hard was that? Not that hard. Okay.
There were a few, So like if we're talking about like zingers, there were a few that were delivered as kind of digs. I mean, I definitely had a lot of questions that were like, I would not consider zingers. These were basic softball, like, can you just let me know what my community is asking about this thing you're telling us you're going to answer questions on? Okay, and then finally I got fed up with it to the point where I was like, all right, you know what I want to hear? Who said that I was lying to comicbook.com last year? That was my like one zinger I threw their way. And I mostly threw that because it just seemed like it was time to do that. But the only I did say that there was one that was asked during the rules segment that was a zinger that was just asked at the wrong time, I feel. Because it was like we spent 2 hours already talking about that stuff about the open Q&A, and this one thrown in here just seems like it's not really the best time to do that. Not that like the question wasn't worth asking, it just wasn't the right time to do it, at least in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of my thought on that.
All right,
it makes sense. So I think we've handily covered the topic about how to do an edition revision that's kind of a 0.5 and kind of not a new edition. What we expect to see from Wizards revision, what are they calling it? The 2024 revision, which is the new name for One D&D. And I think we got through everyone's questions in chat. Does anyone have any more?
The big issue is that they really haven't told us that much about. It's hard to say what they're going to do because they don't really talk about, the actual game anymore, really. They're talking about everything else, like Minecraft and the movie and the plushies and the toys and the VTT and everything except the actual game. So
at the summit, they had a section about the game that was at the end, and that sounded like it had good content in it.
I know, but that was the time when everyone was checked out and it was 3 hours late, and you can see it in the articles because not only that, because they do it chronologically. So it's at the very bottom of the article, and it's a well-known fact that when you read, you lose. People don't go to the end of articles. So
and they did consistently put the game stuff at the end, right? Because in that live commercial thing they did, they also put the game content
and people
updates
check out
at the end.
Yes,
no, I would have been down to play that Minecraft D&D.
That comes out pretty soon, actually. That looks good, and I'm actually pretty excited about that. Yeah, it comes out really soon, I think. Actually, we did a question. Where do you think WoTC will go with D&D if this new 5e doesn't sell well? They are going to force you to sell well. I'll tell you that much. It depends. I don't know. There's nowhere to go. I mean, what are they going to do?
They're kind of all in on it at this point.
Yeah,
they're all in.
Sink or swim.
The only other thing I can think of.
They spent too much on that VTT. If it doesn't work, they're in huge trouble.
I actually have an answer, and no one's going to like this answer. They will do what video game companies do, is they will buy Cobalt, they will buy or try to buy Paizo. That's what they're going to do. They'll try to buy up their competition. And Microsoft does this all the time, and so does Google, and so does everyone. They buy them up and then bury them, and no more competition. It's an unfortunate thing, but it happens quite often.
So there's no confirmed release date for the Minecraft D&D, but it's revealed as spring 2023. So that is really soon.
That's now,
and
right?
By the way, it's the reason why it's so soon is understand like there is a Minecraft Dungeons that already exists that's out. I mean, maybe everyone literally knew that, and this is a DLC for that. It's not like a new game or a completely different thing. It is a D&D skin DLC for an existing game. So
I'm still here for that.
It looked really cool. I think that for fans of Minecraft Dungeons are definitely gonna like it. I think that was a smart crossover.
Yeah, it looks good. It was a genius crossover. I mean, people were like, "Oh, that's so stupid." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I strongly disagree. I think it's actually a genius move, and it will help get more people into the hobby." Especially people that, I mean, it's very, very smart, whether you might not like it, but it was a good idea. And the more I think about it, I mean, I'm actually surprised. I don't think Paizo would sell to them, but I mean, who knows? You never know. I mean, but it's a lot cheaper to buy up your competitors and put them out of business than to try to outmarket them. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't like. The thing is that.
Or you keep them.
Like
you keep them
Piezo
around.
and Cobalt and those other ones have never been a competitor on the same tier or level of sales as WoTC. WoTC making $1 billion on the brand, right? That is way more than what those other companies are making.
I know.
And when I know when people like called them out on it in the video, they admitted like or they claimed, well, we never meant those were our competitors when we said that people were our competitors. We meant the metaverse, and we meant Facebook, and we meant like Disney and other huge giant mega corporations. That's why we called them mega corporations. But the actions they took were really weird considering that. But it's like, how much money, how much market share, how much benefit would they actually get from buying those other companies?
Well,
I don't know that they would.
Actually, you can also get it by getting their talent, and that's also something they do. Because then if you get their talent pool, which is not a bad thing to have.
And if Wizards of the Coast is bringing in $1 billion per year with D&D, but you're looking at Paizo's revenue at 34.9 million, it's still nice, but it's not. I mean, that's not quite what. So that 3.5% of what they bring in with D&D every year.
And the overhead of that, you have to, if you want to do it exactly the same, and maybe you don't, but Paizo has so many staff members, they would be wind up having like, I don't know, like an equal number or more of people on the Paizo part that's making 3.5% as much as the D&D part that is making 96.5%. Like, why would you try to buy that out? I just don't see it. And there was a super chat asking what would be the realistic odds of Paizo selling, and I just don't see WoTC ever buying.
I don't think. Well, here's the issue. So Paizo's owned by Lisa Stevens and Vic. I think there is a 0% chance they would ever sell to WoTC. They're already super rich. They were already bought out by WoTC once because they were WoTC. I mean, she was the number one employee from WoTC and bought out by Hasbro. So why would she do that? The only reason I think they might do it is if they had some amazing quality of life item for everyone at Paizo and put it in writing that everyone would get like a 3-year contract and like benefits and all this stuff to make sure they couldn't just hire them and then liquidate them. That even if they did do that, that everyone got a parachute, not just. And then
WoTC wouldn't take that.
No, they would not.
There's no way they're going to hire on that many people to make that small of an amount compared to what they do.
So
even when you compare it to the 200 million the game itself actually makes instead of the 1 billion for the brand, it's still that 30 some becomes more of a percentage of that, but it's still not worth it in my mind to do that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to look at like their top competitors' annual revenue, like comparatively, and it's like, I mean, if they bought these people out purely to get rid of what they feel is competition, I just don't really see that a lot. Like to say that like they would take out Paizo simply to buy them in order to like take out competition. I mean, 3.5% of their sales and everything. All
right, so we'll go the other direction. They will sell Dungeons and Dragons.
That is another possibility. Or what they'll do what Hasbro sometimes does and shelve the brand for a while.
They will not shelve it. It's the highest it's ever been. There's 0 chance they will sell it. They could sell it.
They may market to see what they could sell it for, and if they can't find a buyer,
they'll sell it to Disney. I guarantee Disney would buy that.
But Disney would take it.
Oh, Disney would buy it in a second. I guarantee they can sell it. And if they got a couple billion off of it, they'd be very happy. And they would just say and write it and call it a day.
And then Disney would be like, listen, we're not the same people as before, so our new Disney thing will work for it.
Or
so this is
Group.
in the hypothetical where their new plan doesn't work, but there's like
they would sell
I just don't think there's a very high chance of their new relaunch actually plummeting that much. I think that like almost no matter what they do, it's going to do okay. The question is whether it meets their own internal expectations, right? So even fourth edition, which if you think of like the historical narrative about it, is that it's a failure. But really, it actually sold pretty well. It just
The only
didn't meet
reason it
their
was a
internal
failure-
expectations.
I don't mean to interrupt you. The only reason it was a failure is because they stopped marketing it and they stopped selling it, which allowed Pathfinder to start beating them. They didn't beat them on the same. It was not the same battlefield. The battlefield, they basically retreated and they're like, "We won." It's like, because they're not here anymore. That's why
So
you
if you're
won.
talking about ICV2 and the times when Pathfinder was above D&D in hobby sales, that's exactly correct.
Yes.
Which is that the only times that it was above was after 4E was already like, we're kind of out.
Yeah.
We're making a 5E now.
Yeah.
And so they didn't really have new releases.
Yeah.
It's still very impressive that even then, that in that one subset that Paizo got made more, because D&D is just such a big name. Like we all said here, that the Player's Handbook was number 8 on Amazon bestsellers last week or something like that.
Yeah.
It is an evergreen product. It still doesn't mean that Paizo didn't do something impressive, but it was, up against an edition that wasn't putting things out.
They would be able to sell it because just the name Dungeons and Dragons has so much cachet. They can. I mean, it's horrible, and this is pretty much what Disney does. They'll take it, use the name, and then rebrand and throw it all away, and just use it for something completely different. And that happens all the time. Some general questions that are not super chats. Let's see. There was a couple real quick. I'll answer out. Since you didn't pay, I'll do the super quick fire. You get the 5-second answer. Where do you think WoTC will go? If it doesn't sell, we already did this. Do you think they will ban streamers and YouTubers from VTT?
No.
Not like the themes? No, they
No.
will not. There's no reason to be honest. I mean, it also depends what the EULA is. They could, in theory, ban them if they do things like that to go against the EULA, but in that case, then don't go against the EULA. So has WoTC even addressed who the target market age and demographic for the VTT is? No, but I already know because they keep mentioning phones over and over again, and they won't stop mentioning phones, and they seem to subconsciously mention phones. So it's not us. It's going to be people using phones for all their video game needs and video game playing. Who are those people? Oh, those are the people who spend $200 million on a year on in-game collectibles and microtransactions, which is not us. So that, I believe, is their true market. Which one is worse? WoTC, Hasbro, or Disney? That is a very complex answer because Disney is so big and does so much. And I was just talking about this the other night with someone that there are aspects of Disney that are horrible, but there's actually a lot of aspects of Disney that are quite good. And
whenever you're at a big company, you'll find that there are people who are trying to do good things that are in it, and there are people who are very scummy that are there.
However, Disney is in this unique situation. I don't know if anyone realizes this. Disney has a fiefdom within the United States of America and owns.
Oh, people are more and more realizing
they're starting
of the
to realize
giant
that
fight they're having with
DeSantis
over their fiefdom.
And they own everything, and they have. If you ever go there, they exist as their own separate country within the United States, and it's all legal, and it's all set up. And they did this back in the 40s and 50s when they bought that land for 49 cents an acre because it was swampland and no one wanted it. And they turned it into, they have their own power, they have their own police force, they have everything as themselves. And the second biggest buyer of military grade explosives, I think, in the world, definitely in the United States, because they have a fireworks show every single night. And let me tell you, that requires a lot of explosives, and they're long too. So the United States is number 1, and they're right number 2. I know it sounds insane. They spend like billions of dollars on explosives. It's like, don't ask. I know a lot about Disney. I used to be like really into the whole concept. I've been to it I'm not a Disney nut, but when I was younger, I used to be very interested in the whole concept of Disney as its own entity within Florida, and I still find it fascinating, especially now people are starting to finally find out about it. But if you go to Disney World, because it's so big, like as soon as you get past the border of Florida to Disney World, everything changes. The lights change, the signs change. It's like you're in another country, because you are. Like, next time you go, check it out. You'll be like, oh my god, everything here is different. It's like they have their own laws. It's really weird. And they used to have Disney bucks. Anyone remember that? No one remembers. They're too old. I'm too old. They still do that. Oh, by the way, so do check out, I think we're done with this. Plus, I got to feed my dog. So check out Instruct the Boys Vagabond. Where'd you come up with the name Vagabond?
Well, I had originally wanted to call it
Shame.
I do what?
Call it Shame.
Yeah. I had originally wanted to call it Requiem, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then I was like, oh wait, Vampire the Requiem.
Yeah.
That's trademarked. And it just came from like kind of, spitballing some other ideas, but eventually settled on Vagabond because I want the game to be solo or group playable. So if you wanted to be a lone venturing vagabond, you could, like solo. Plus it just felt like it kind of snapped, right? So, with the system, it's supposed to be solo or cooperative or group playable. At least that's what I'm building it out to be. So you all can go check out a full system, like overview and everything. It's still an in development PDF, and it's over there on the Kickstarter right now. If you want to see what you're backing before you back it and all that. So yeah, this is a development Kickstarter, and I'm doing a book Kickstarter next year.
Cool.
So,
and by the way, do like the stream. Do check out Instructo Boy. I guess I'm mispronouncing because people are like, you're saying it wrong.
It is Indestructo.
Oh,
you
Indestructo Boy.
I think next year
Instructo or
Indestructo Boy. Too many syllables.
No, all my I think next year for April Fools, I'm gonna swap all my social media over to Instructo Boy.
Instructo Boy. I like that.
Yeah, you can make a set of streams where you teach new players how to play 5e.
Yeah.
It's called Instructo Boy without
Instructo Boy. That's what I thought you were doing. I thought you were instructing people how to play.
No.
Instead, he's saying
not
how you blow up D&D.
You cannot
Boy.
You cannot destroy Terran. He is indestructible.
I am Destructo Boy. Indestructo Boy. Someone wrote here, they do have Disney bucks. That is true. So I will leave everyone before we say goodbye. Do like and subscribe. Check out battlezoo.com. We have almost done the Battlezoo Best Story Strange and Unusual any day now.
Yes.
I'm literally just waiting for a couple more illustrations, and that's it. Otherwise, it's
wow! I didn't even know there were a few outstanding illustrations, but those should come in soon, right?
Well, I needed 3 full-page illustrations, and I have 2 of them, and the third one's taking a little while. I know the full-page ones are a pain because it's very hard for even the artists to know how long they take, which is annoying. But they have here. Someone said this is an e-ticket stream. Have you heard of the e-ticket? Do you know what the e-ticket ride is or e-ticket? No.
I've heard about it because my little brother went with like his in-laws and his wife's side of the family to Disney World like last week or something like that.
I will explain to you what that is. So, long time ago when I was a little kid, they used to have, the way you went to Disney World is that you would have a ticket book and you would buy the ticket book, and the ticket book was arranged into A, B, C, D, and E ticket rides. And things like Space Mountain, which just opened when I was a kid, was an E-ticket ride. And then the rides were basically ranked from coolness from A to E. A is the crappy rides. B were like, A was like the Hall of Presidents and stuff, And then B were like the okay rides. And then C was like the Tiki Room. And then I think like D was like, they're really good rides, but not the best. And then you had the E-ticket rides, were like Pirates of the Caribbean and Big Thunder Mountain. Yeah, Big Thunder Mountain was just opened. And then you have like Space Mountain and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like those were all the E-ticket rides. So
apparently I did not know what the E-ticket they were referring to was, because there's a new E-ticket thing that you need to use to skip the lines.
Yes. They're using the old terminology. So if you ever hear people say, that's an e-ticket ride, that means that is the best. There you go.
Huh.
They learn something new every day.
Yeah. I definitely learned that. But now it's like an e-ticket with like little e dash, whereas before it was probably like capital A, B, C, D, and E.
It is. Well, look it up. It's actually a coupon book. If you look,
Neat.
if you look online, you could just say to type in, and it was literally a coupon book, and you would buy coupons. And then if you ran out, then you would have to go back and buy more E-ticket or B-ticket coupons. And I remember the end of our book, I probably have them somewhere in like my attic. It was like, of course, all the E and the D tickets were totally used, and the E and the C tickets, but like the A's and I think like the B's, like no one used. Like none of those were used. Those are crappy rides. Like you don't want to go on those.
Right.
So you go on all the best ones. But we're talking like that's
Now
like early 80s, 70s. So.
And there's a really cool discography on that here on YouTube. You guys ever heard of Defunct Land?
Yes, I know.
Oh man, I love it. This sounds like such a boring video, but I swear it's like such a banger. But just his video on Fast Pass, where he's like just talking about, it's like the most interesting documentary on waiting in line ever. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, I'll tell you
That's where I
another.
heard about that.
Okay, I'll give you another life hack, and then we'll go. I told you I'm like I'm a park aficionado. You can. I don't know if they still do this at Disney World, but I used to do this all the time. If you are a single rider, you can go in the exit of the best rides, like the Indiana Jones rides and stuff. You don't go in. Some of them you do it in the entrance. Most of you go in the exit. You actually go through the exit, go to the back, and then you say single rider. And they wait because they have to fill up, and they only fill up with like, so if there's a row of 4, like the Indiana Jones ride, and only 3 people go into it because they put everyone together, you say, hey, I'm a single rider, and they put you right in, and you cut the whole line. There you go. Yeah. I used to be a amusement park aficionado, as you could probably tell. I know all the tricks.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. That we were glad to have you here, and thanks for coming, Taryn, to talk about the edition revision in 2024.
Yes.
Thank you all for having me.
Yes, I wouldn't worry about it so much. Just come out with who you're going to come out with, and and you know what? If they come out with a new version, you come out with a new version, and then just come out with the digital errata. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Everyone's going to be in the same boat.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Oh, my dogs are barking. They're hungry. See ya.
Okay. Bye, everyone.